These stories are first-hand accounts shared by Reddit users, detailing unsettling real-life encounters that left lasting impressions. Each narrative provides a chilling glimpse into moments of danger, survival, and eerie coincidences that might make you rethink your surroundings. Disclaimer: these accounts were originally published by Reddit users and are presented as personal experiences. While they are described as true events, their accuracy relies on the original storytellers. The details shared here are intended for awareness and cautionary purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. Story 1. I don't look at the sky after dark anymore. Hey, so I'm not keen with astrology or space or any of that crap. I'm more of a stay inside and be lazy as shit kind of guy. But a while back my girlfriend, for the sake of keeping her name safe I'll call her June, mentioned that she was super into it and that she even had a telescope when she was a kid, but her brothers broke it being the children they were at the time. I thought I'd be slick and get her one for our 3-year anniversary, 'cause I wasn't about to get hitched when everything was going so well, you know what I mean? It's like my old man always said, don't be greedy, be happy with what bullshit life lets you have. Anyways, this was a couple months ago back in early April this year, and I had heard from the chick at the Dick's Sporting Goods when I bought it that there was a comet rolling by on Easter Day. After doing the math, admittedly on some fingers, don't judge me, I only cared about history class in high school, I summed that up to be a week and a half before the anniversary, so it gave a damn good opportunity to test the pricey mother out. So I waited, 2 or 3 weeks go by, and I go out in my backyard while she's at work. I'm sorry I forgot to mention June's EMT. She just got done with school, so her hours at work take up more of the later hours of the day. It's actually how we met. My foreman broke his leg and I got this little gal's number while that dick was crying like a baby. Anyways, I set it up and the first thing I did was look up where the Big Dipper and Little Dipper were. Yeah, no big deal. They were there, not really anything special. Had to look up Scorpio and that other one that goes with it, the solder that kills it in that story. Sorry, like I said, I'm not really one to care anything about stuff like that unless it's war history and what weird-ass gun Brendan Herrera bought this week on YouTube. You get the picture. I saw the moon, it was cool. I can see how some people would think there's a face on the moon. Growing up I thought I looked like a weird emoji version of the ghost face mask. Made me laugh whenever me and the boys would smoke a bowl back in high school. I looked and finally saw the comet. It was cool. Pretty even. But not life-changing. It wasn't until I saw the explosion of it going through the moon that I may or may not have shit my pants. I don't have a good understanding of space shit, but I'm fairly certain that comets and asteroids are only visible when they're in Earth's atmosphere, right? I'm not smart, but even my stupid ass knows that much. I shrugged it off, and just looked back at the moon, but the area where I saw it land, more like it collided into, was red and a weird hue of jade. Almost reminded me of the color of mold that the white part of bread gets to. I zoomed in as much I could. I couldn't obviously get a great detail of exactly what I was looking at, but fuck, I've seen enough injuries on the job to know what fresh blood looks like. I put that damn spyglass up and went back inside. It was way too much for me. I made fun of Scientologists and UFO believers all my life. I didn't need to think about it. It wasn't my problem as far as I was concerned. Elon Musk can harvest the fucking thing for a new Tesla rocket. I didn't. Until I went outside the next night and the corpse, or rather body in this case, was no longer in the small blurry red smear in the scope lens. It's been a couple months now, and since then, me and June are engaged. I never told her about the red crater on the moon. I never said I used the scope. And I'll never look in one again. I am going to live my life ignorant and hopefully in bliss. June's been talking about moving after we're married. She's wanting to move to Oklahoma, closer to her family. I want to move to Anchorage in Alaska. It's the cloudiest place in America according to Safari. And that's fine with me. Story 2. I got a new job as a librarian. There are strange books here. I got a new job recently. I know that nowadays, being a librarian isn't what it used to be. They're underpaid, overworked, and running on fumes. The lack of funding from local municipalities certainly plays a role, and the internet makes it so that checking out books can either be done entirely online or not at all. That said, I still think they're an important pillar of the community, a place where you can just be, where you don't have to spend money just to exist, where you can just pick up a book, sit down and read. While most libraries are run and funded by the municipality, this one wasn't. It was someone's private library that they've opened to the public. It was tucked away in a quaint little village, and it looked and functioned just like a normal library. Anyone can come in, apply for membership, and start borrowing. The only difference is that this library has a private section that was invite only. To be able to borrow from that section, you had to be approved by the owner himself. Not even I was allowed to enter that section. Only the head librarian and my manager, Johanna Lenz, had the key. One night, right before closing, a young man came in. I hadn't seen him before. He had thick, curly hair and deep brown eyes that had a gold sheen if you looked at it from the right angle. He greeted me politely and handed me his library card. It was one of the special ones. It said his name was Michael Lee and it had a black border with intricate patterns to denote his special access. "Ah, welcome, Michael," I said, a little nervous. "How can I help you?" "I'm here to return a book," he said with a smile, and handed me a tattered copy of Oliver Twist. It looked like it had the normal library sticker on the spine. I sighed with relief inwardly. If he'd given me a book that belonged to the private collection, I wouldn't have been able to help him. Johanna had called in sick, which was a surprise because she seemed tough as nails. "Certainly." I opened the inside of the book and stamped the return on the little leaflet. "Thank you very much." "No problem," Michael said. "Do you enjoy working here?" I nodded excitedly. "Yes. I really enjoy working with books. I think they're special, so much knowledge, fun, and adventure in them." Michael smiled. "I'm glad you think so." He turned to leave, before he seemed to remember something and turned back. "Oh, by the way, as you might have noticed, old Hannah is getting on in age. It's good that she has someone so enthusiastic like you." He looked at the Oliver Twist I was holding. "Say, would you like to have access to the private collection? I'm sure you'll be of great help." "Oh, I haven't been here too long, but I'd be happy to help Johanna out with the private collection." Michael nodded. "Just go put that book away, and I'm sure the big boss will give you the key." He turned around and waved at me as he walked out the door. "Good luck." I was a little confused as I was standing here with Oliver Twist. It was just a book from the normal collection, right? Sure, I might wander around a little to try and find the correct shelf, since I don't have them all memorized yet, but I'll get it eventually. I set about to put it back. A hardcover Oliver Twist, by Charles Dickens, so DC. A bit of an unconventional system, if I may say. It takes some getting used to. To make matters even more complicated, the private collection apparently used an entirely different system, but that's neither here nor there. I walked over to the children's section, but before I was able to put it back, the dust cover slipped. I was a little surprised to see that it had one to begin with, as I could have sworn it didn't have a dust cover before. It was probably just glued on very well. I cringed a little. I needed to be more careful with these older books. I put the book down at a nearby table and started to readjust the cover, when I noticed that the book itself wasn't Oliver Twist at all. It was a leather-bound version of Call of the Wild by Jack London, first edition 1960. The leather was old and scarred, like it had really been in the wild. The title looked as if it had been sloppily carved out. At this point, I was angry both at myself and at Michael. At myself for not checking better, and at Michael for bringing the book in with the wrong cover. I sighed and went to put it back. I stopped again. The title shifted. It now read Vocatio Ferrarum. I stopped and frowned, and flipped open to a random page. The page I opened was a double-paged illustration of the wild woods on a dark night, with our hero wolf dog standing on a rock, looking down on me, his teeth bared and his eyes stark in the night. It seemed like he was beckoning me, daring me to come to him. I could almost feel the wintry chill on my skin, and my nose caught a whiff of frozen pine. I slammed the book shut, and the sensation disappeared. I slowly opened the book and looked closer at the inner cover, at the leaflet where I put down the stamp. From Hilford Jensen's private collection. I cursed inwardly. I couldn't call Johanna as she was sick, but I couldn't leave it here either. It seemed wrong somehow. I remembered Michael's good luck. I was beginning to understand why he said that. I decided to put the book in the back, and that was that. No more weird shifting titles or mistaken dust covers. I was just tired and the setting sun was playing tricks. I started walking back when the lights flickered off. I stopped, suddenly standing in darkness. I thought it was still sunset, but now it was completely dark. When I looked outside, I froze. I saw a full moon high up in the sky. Something was so very wrong. It was 6 p.m. Even if it would get a little dark, it was nowhere near the full moon. The smell of pines was stronger now, and I could almost feel the temperature dropping. I stepped back in surprise. It felt and sounded like I stepped on snow. I could hear something rustling between the shelves, a deep and guttural growl, and I stood very still. The wolf? Here in the library? I held out a hand to try and stabilize myself on a nearby shelf, but all I could feel was the hard bark of a tree. I immediately withdrew my hand, but when I looked, all I could see was a shelf. I clutched the book to my chest, trying to find any comfort at all. The leather was icy cold. "No," I said softly. I couldn't believe what was happening. "This isn't real." The growling got louder. "No!" I shouted this time and started running as fast as I could. I felt like a rabbit before the wolves, and I wished I could burrow somewhere safe, but I couldn't. I could hear panting and howling as the wolves ran after me. I jumped over the counter, straight through the door to the back, and slammed it shut behind me. I was in total darkness. I could hear the wolves scratching and howling at the door. I breathed a sigh of relief, but that was short-lived when I heard something growl in the darkness. I saw two golden eyes looking at me, glowing, as if emitting their own light. They were staring me down like I was prey. But I realized it wasn't looking at me, it was looking at the book. In its eyes I could see a yearning for freedom, and that book could give it. Then all of a sudden, it lunged at my chest. I suppressed a scream and dodged. The wolf disappeared into the darkness. I followed the walls, flailing blindly, trying to find an exit, any exit. I could feel its claws scratch my legs, his barking ringing in my ear. I was kicking and screaming, and I felt my legs connect with something heavy. A yelp rang out in the dark. Finally, I found a door. It was open. I could almost cry in relief. I quickly went through, and with all my might I closed the door, the wolf throwing his whole weight against it. I collapsed right there and sobbed. What was going on? What is this book? I tried to convince myself that it was all a dream, but it felt far too real. I felt my leg. It was bleeding where the wolf scratched me. I cried again, burying my head in my knees. I wished I never got this job. After what seemed like a long time, I noticed that the scratching and barking had stopped. I still didn't want to go out in case they came back. It was only now that I started wondering where I was. The storage room only had one other door, the door to the private collection. I frowned. Usually a key was needed. I guess that Johanna forgot to lock it. I felt the floor behind me, a step going down. It made sense that the private collection would be in the basement. I picked up the book and slowly went down the steps, feeling around carefully. The steps were uneven but smoothed over by age and use, as if they'd been there far before the library was even built. I could feel strange carvings along the walls. Finally, the steps ended, and the space opened up. I felt around for a light switch. I flicked it. It only lit up the first row of dusty books. I could see the outline of more rows, but they all disappeared in utter darkness. The books in the shelves were strange. I could immediately tell they were old, and so very similar to the one I was holding. I didn't want to enter, but I knew I had to make the wolves stop. The codes were different here, like I said, but I didn't know the logic behind them. Yet, I noticed that the code itself was the same. I supposed the meaning behind the numbers were different. I laughed to myself. Why am I thinking about sorting with wolves in my library? I found an empty spot that wasn't as dusty, and to my relief, it seems like this was also where this book belonged. I put it back, and immediately, the oppressing cold lifted from my skin. I couldn't smell the pine anymore. I couldn't hear the wolves. They were gone. I almost collapsed again from relief, but I stayed upright and went back up the stairs. In the library, the sunset was back. I went home. I don't know why, but I went back to work the next morning. I think I still half believed it was a weird dream and I was craving routine and normalcy. Johanna still wasn't there, but there was an envelope laying on the counter. It had a letter. Excellent work. Congratulations on your new position. I sighed. I knew I should resign. I knew I should run the other way very fast and try to look for a different job. Yet, at the same time, I knew I couldn't. I don't know why, but something had shifted in me. At least the position came with a hefty raise. Story 3. What was inside me wasn't mine. The beast disappeared into the dead of night, but I knew it would never leave me alone. I was now marked. And done. The tapping on the keyboard silenced as Maya submitted the final chapter of her horror book to her editor. Ah. She stood up and stretched. Nightfall already. She takes a step out onto the cabin front porch. The stars were bright and the forest was alive and filled with chirping, croaking, and the occasional snapping of branches. What was that? She looked in the direction of the sound but saw nothing but forest trees and shadows. An eerie chill breathes past her, causing her to shiver and return back indoors. With her 6-week solo writer's retreat coming to an end and the completion of her horror story, celebrating with wine seemed like the perfect ending. As she poured her wine into her glass and picked it up to drink, she noticed her breath fogging the glass. When did it get so cold here? She frowned, rubbing the goosebumps on her arms as she walked to the thermostat. It was still at the same temperature as before. Maya doesn't ponder any more about the occurrence, only leaving bookmarks in her head of what to tell the cabin owner about. Besides, she has written worse things than a cold spot in a cabin. After a few glasses of wine and a buzz later, she decided to get up and take a shower. The steam filled the bathroom, fogging up the glass shower and the mirror above the sink. While washing her hair, there it was again. The cold, eerie chill. Only this time it felt close, like a breath on her neck, causing the hairs on her arms and the back of her neck to stand. Shivering and submersing her body under the hot water, she walks to the glass and swipes her hand across to peek out. Get it together, Maya. She shakes the feeling again. Writing all of those horror stories is starting to get to me. Then quickly she turns the shower off and gets out, wrapping the towel around her body. Before exiting the bathroom, she noticed what looked like a giant handprint on the glass shower. Perhaps writing a horror novel in a creepy cabin in the woods has taken a toll on my mind. After allowing the rest of her body to air dry, she climbs into the cool sheets, covering herself up. After tonight, it's back to the city. Fast living, loud noises, and deadlines. Maybe I won't concentrate so much on horror this time. She mumbles to herself while lying in the dark. The sounds of crickets chirping, croaking, and winds brushing past the cabin's outer walls quickly lulled her to sleep. While she slept, she heard them. Heavy, slow, intentional. Footsteps in the kitchen. Each step became louder and heavier as it made its way towards her bedroom door. Thud, thud, thud. Closer. Fear jolted her awake, but when she looks in the direction of the open doorway, there is nothing there. Ugh. Maya sucks her teeth as she lays back onto her pillow and shuts her eyes again. But was she asleep? She was lying on her back, her eyes were wide open, but she couldn't move. Couldn't speak, couldn't call for help. Then it appeared from the darkness. Maya's breathing became heavy and she could feel her pulse rising. This moment felt like an eternity. The thing, the beast, was huge. I bore the head of a ram, the body of a man, and hooves for feet. A satyr? Krampus? Forest creature folklore? Maya has written about them all. But this. The thing stared at her from the doorway with its red eyes. She held her breath, while also trying to squeeze her eyes shut but could not. As her heart rate seems to rise and drop due to the rise in fear and stress, the footsteps of the beast's feet quicken louder. Maya fights to turn her head even an inch to look at the beast up close, only managing to look at it out of the corner of her eyes. She could feel herself trying to will her body to move, pinching herself to try to wake up, but nothing was working. Then it happened. She felt it. The tongue. Cold. Slimy. Wet. Slithering slowly to her left ear. Maya couldn't scream, she couldn't move, not even blink. All she could do was lock eyes with the entity invading her mind, her body, and her spirit. It invaded her, slithering in impossibly long, breaking through her eardrum, into the nasal cavity, and down into her mouth. It continued down her throat, chest before setting her stomach on fire. Finally, her body broke free from its prison. She shot up, gasping and drenched in sweat. With no time wasted, she runs to the bathroom and vomits up every bit of what she ate and drank before bed. While washing her face and her hands, she looked in the mirror and it read, "I liked what you wrote. So I decided to help you write a new story." She grabbed her belly as her head spun. Story 4. My new roommate won't stop knocking on my door at night. He moved in 2 days ago. I met Andrew through a Facebook post. I needed a roommate fast, and he messaged me 5 minutes after I posted in the local housing group. No profile picture. No mutual friends. But he said all the right things. Said he had a stable remote job, no pets, quiet, clean, respectful. I FaceTimed him once. He seemed normal. A little awkward maybe, but I didn't care. I needed rent. He moved in on Friday. By Saturday night, I wanted him out. The first red flag was the way he unpacked. He brought 4 boxes. That's it. No bed, no decorations, not even a backpack. The boxes were taped tight and he carried them one at a time, always holding them away from his body, like they might bite. I offered to help. He didn't answer, just smiled, then took the last box into his room and shut the door. I didn't see him the rest of the day. Around midnight, I heard him whispering in there. Couldn't make out the words. It sounded like a prayer, or maybe a list. He didn't stop until 3 a.m. The next morning, I went to make coffee. The kitchen was spotless. My cereal box was in the fridge. My coffee beans had been alphabetized. And there was a note on the counter, in blocky, perfect handwriting. I replaced your sponge. The old one had too many eyes. I stood there staring at it for a full minute. Then I opened the cupboard. New sponge. Bright yellow. And on the floor beneath the sink, the old one. Soaked. Covered in black mold I swear wasn't there the day before. The middle was ripped open. Like it had teeth. That night, I locked my bedroom door. Around 2:11 a.m., I heard footsteps outside it. Slow. Careful. Then a knock. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just 2 soft taps. I didn't move. Another knock. 3 this time. Slightly faster. "Andrew?" I asked. No reply. I checked the peephole. No one there. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. But another note was taped to the wall. Don't answer until the 3rd knock. She gets impatient. I didn't sleep after that. I confronted him the next day. He was sitting in the living room, facing the blank TV screen. When I asked what the notes were about, he blinked slowly and said, "You heard her, didn't you?" "Heard who?" "She doesn't like being seen too soon. It ruins her." Then he turned back to the blank TV. Smiling. I backed into my room and locked the door. That night, I heard him whispering again. Not to himself this time. I could hear the difference. He was answering someone. Listening. Nodding between each line. I pressed my ear to the wall. His voice came through clearer. "She wants to know your name," he said. "She wants to wear it." I stopped sleeping in the apartment after that. I stayed at a friend's for a night. No calls, no messages from Andrew. But I got a voicemail. No number. Just, unknown. 30 seconds of breathing. Then whispering. Then, right before it ended, my own voice saying, "Let me back in." I hadn't said that. I came home the next day, planning to kick him out. Tell him to pack up his 4 boxes and leave. But the boxes were gone. All that was left in his room was a circle of salt around the bed. Symbols drawn in the carpet. Or blood. And one last note. "Don't break the circle. She likes you. She might not stop at your name." I called the police. They found the room empty. No Andrew. No salt. No symbols. Just an empty room with bare walls and cold air. They asked if I'd been drinking. That night, the knocking came again. 2:14 a.m. 3 soft knocks. I didn't move. Then I heard a voice right outside the door. High-pitched. Trying too hard to sound friendly. "I have your name." It scratched at the wood. "I want to give it back." I didn't answer. At 3 a.m. on the dot, it stopped. The next morning, the hallway wall was covered in fingerprints. Tiny. Like a child's. Burned into the paint. There was another note, slipped under my door. "She's inside now. Don't let her out. She wears new faces. You won't recognize them until they smile." I haven't seen Andrew since. I don't think I ever really met him. But I hear the knocking every night. Always at the same time. And always one knock closer. Story 5. Mr. Stranger and the High Beams. Memories work in interesting ways. Some from a decade past are clear and vivid, and last week could be a fog. There are periods of time erased, however the past has shallow graves. It only takes a few words to bring everything back to the surface. For me, it was my mother's voice at the kitchen table. "Do you remember your imaginary friend?" she asked, stirring her coffee, thinking back to what she thought was childhood whimsy. And just like that, the name crawled out from the dark. Mr. Stranger. It didn't feel like a memory. It felt like waking up mid-conversation with something you'd forgotten you were listening to. Most people recall flashes from early childhood, an emotion, a birthday, a toy. I remember him. And I think he remembers me. He came during the year I was homeschooled. Lonely doesn't even cover it. I had no friends, no playmates. My parents were good people, just busy. I lived in silence, days swallowed by the buzz of a box fan and the creak of a two-story house. Until he came. It started with a tapping. Tap tap tap. I was 6. I remember it was past midnight. I crept to the window, heart thudding in my chest like a rabbit in a trap. I pulled back the curtain expecting wind or a branch or nothing. But there were no trees near my window. Only the long black beyond the glass, the moon hanging heavy above the distant woods. Tap tap tap. Closer now. From the other side of the glass. Then a voice. Come. Velvet soft and serpentine. "May I come in?" I should have screamed. But I was lonely, and children will trust anything that speaks softly enough. I cracked the window. The night breathed in. I could smell moss and something burnt. I listened. But the voice was gone. So I shut it and backed into bed, heart still thumping. The window creaked shut on its own. That night, as I buried myself beneath the blanket, I felt breath on my neck. "Don't worry," he whispered right behind me. "I've got you." And I believed him. Mr. Stranger became everything to me. I never saw him then, but I felt him, hovering just behind the veil of sight, like looking at a star that vanishes when stared at. We talk. We play. He would tell me strange stories about roots that strangle and moons that bleed. I'd laugh because I thought he was being silly. I was a child. He taught me games. We'd draw together. Symbols. Circles. Spirals that made my hand cramp as it spun over and over like it wasn't mine. "What is it?" I asked, giggling. "Home," he replied. We covered the walls with the drawings. Pages and pages, odd marks and runes that made no sense to me, but made him hum with approval. "They're for your protection," he said. "From the ones beneath." I didn't ask what that meant. I just kept drawing. My parents found the pages. They tore them down, threw them out with the garbage. Called them nonsense. Called me disturbed. That night, Mr. Stranger didn't speak. He had left me. And then the dreams came. They were not dreams. They were burials. Each night I was dragged, screaming, into the black soil. Hands with too many knuckles clawed at my limbs. I was pulled beneath the roots, into a place that pulsed like a dying heart. I'd wake screaming, soaked in piss and sweat, throat raw and lungs empty. My parents let me sleep with them after the second night. It didn't help, because even there they could save me in my dream. The last night of it all happened when they finally put me back in my room. Mom tucked me in. "Why did my friend leave?" I asked her, barely above a whisper. "I don't know, baby," she said, brushing my hair back. "But you've got me." But her warmth wasn't the same. Her love didn't reach as deep. I lay in silence. Tap tap tap. I bolted to the window, heart pounding with joy and terror. I flung it open. "Welcome home." These words echoed into the void as the night overtook me. The forest was alive. I don't know how I got there. I remember the window, then darkness, then trees, so many trees. Their branches twisted like antlers, blotting out the moon. My legs bled. My feet were raw. My pajamas are shredded by thorns and bramble. I screamed for help. No one answered. Then came the footsteps. At first, just one set. Then more. Dozens. Hundreds. All around me. pattering through the underbrush like bare feet on wet tile. I could hear in unison the gnarled growl of dozens of empty stomachs. They weren't just chasing me. They were hurting me. I ran. My breath ripped my throat. My lungs burned. I didn't know where I was going, I just needed out. I ran as the sharp claws of the forest reached and pulled at my clothing. The harsh bramble and thorns cut into my legs and feet. I ran, the skittering followed, but I never saw my pursuers. The air grew colder. The ground steeper. My tears blurred the world. I broke through the trees and fell, rolling down a hill, branches snapping against my back. Then thud. I hit the pavement. A road. I tried to scream for help, but only a rasp came out. Then in the distance, headlights. Blinding. Barreling toward me. I tried to rise. My ankle screamed in protest. The light roared, and just before it hit me, I saw him. Wrong. Strings for limbs. A body like a silhouette carved out of darkness. And a face, no face. Just a reflection. A mirror, twisting my own terrified face back at me. Then nothing. I woke up in my bed, covered in mud. Burrs stuck to my skin. My legs were bloodied and scratched. Pajamas torn. My feet looked flayed, like I'd been dragging them through glass. But the room? Pristine. No mud. No trail. No open window. Just me. Shaking. Breathing. Remembering. My parents panicked. They couldn't explain my wounds and the mess. Especially with the house showing no signs of it. They didn't believe my story that I just appeared in the woods, or especially that Mr. Stranger saved me. But there was no explanation. It was after that day he was gone, or he didn't show himself to me. The days went by, I started public school, life moved on. I had nearly forgotten of all of it until that simple question. But lately, the tapping's back. Not at the window. Inside my head. So reassuring. Almost like it's humming. I keep telling myself I'm fine. That I just haven't been sleeping well. That nothing is waiting in the dark. But just now, after writing all this down, I went to splash some water on my face. I looked up at the mirror, and in the reflection of my pupil just a glint, just for a second I saw him. Long limbs. Faceless. Twisting ever so slightly, like a shadow caught mid-dance. And I don't know what's worse. That he's back. Or that he's always been there. Watching. Waiting. Smiling with a mouth I'll never see. But somehow, I think everything's going to be okay. He's got me. Story 6. The Stomping Game. There was recently an earthquake around where I live here in Jersey. Thankfully, other than a few broken valuables, I'm safe and my home avoided major damage. During the aftermath of it all, I had a memory resurface that I hadn't thought of in quite some time. I'm not sure if it was the vibrations I felt during the tremors that triggered it or just the stress of the situation, but now the memory is as clear as day to me, so I figured I'd write it down before it vanished again. It's been a while since I was a child. I'm 36 now, if that puts the time span into perspective. I'm single, have no children, and live alone, so childlike imagination rarely has any place in my day-to-day life. Sleep, work, eat, repeat. That's about it. When the memory flooded back into my mind, though, it was as if I was transported back in time. I called it the Stomping Game. I came up with it when I was around 12 years old. My mom and dad usually worked late, and my only sibling was always involved with sports and friends, so it was usually just me in the house during the summers and until late evening after school. I typically occupied myself with TV, my PlayStation, or whatever entertainment I could find at the time. One summer morning, while playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and enjoying the house to myself, an idea came to me. This idea wasn't too outlandish for a kid to muster. I simply wanted to create a game. Not a video game, but something physical like hopscotch or duck duck goose. I didn't have many friends, other than a few cordial buddies I only saw during the school year, so I wanted to come up with something I could play by myself. Excited to write down the details, I quickly grabbed a pencil and scribbled the rules and steps on a piece of paper. Where that paper remains today is beyond me. We moved from that house when I was 16, so the transcript was probably lost somewhere along the way. Despite no tangible evidence, I now once again remember everything written on it. Each rule, each step, down to the tiniest detail. I am about to transcribe the written portion of the stomping game now. As a word of warning, I ask that if you are brave enough to try this game yourself, you proceed with caution. If you do wish to play the game, I ask that you first read my own experience, described below, before doing so. My only wish is to explain the game, not place anyone in the way of danger. The rules of the stomping game are as follows. Rule 1. You must seclude yourself in an enclosed space. The only specifics for this enclosed space are that it must include some form of an entrance that can be opened or closed, and this entrance must remain closed during the duration of the game. Rule 2. You must be alone. If anyone is in the enclosed space with you, the game will not work. Do not try to trick the game and hide someone in the enclosed space. Rule 3. You must shut off all noise to your ears. Whether you use your hands or a device to do this is up to you. Rule 4. You must not speak. Speaking at all during the game is not permitted. There must be complete silence once the game has begun. Rule 5. You must not open your eyes. Opening your eyes during the game will result in the game's immediate conclusion. Rule 6. Once you have played and concluded the game, you may not play again. The steps of the stomping game are as follows. Step 1. Find an enclosed, secluded area to play the game. An empty room, a tent, a playhouse, etc. can be used. The only specifics are that the space is away from others and has an entrance that can be opened and closed. If the space does not follow these specifics, the game will not work. Be advised, a larger area proves more suitable and safer for this game. Step 2. Cut off sound to your ears. Headphones or earplugs work the best, but holding your hands over the ears completely will also work. It is important that no outside sound makes it into your ears. To know that you have followed this step correctly, you should be able to faintly hear the beating of your heart through your ears. It is important to not speak at any point once you have covered your ears so as to not break the rules of the game. Step 3. Upon complete silence and seclusion, begin counting from 1 to 67 in your head. Make sure to count slowly and steadily. Rushing through the count can lead to mishaps. Step 4. As you count up to the number 67, become aware of any vibrations around you. These vibrations will begin slowly, but hasten as you count down. At first they will feel like distant bumps, growing gradually into steps resonating through the base of your enclosed area. For the best chances, place yourself seated at the center of your space, so as to be able to feel all the vibrations that take place. Step 5. Once you approach the number 67, prepare yourself. The vibrations will begin to feel like close stomps, advancing and retreating in no particular rhythm. If the stomps appear to be advancing towards you at a quickened pace, uncover your eyes as quickly as possible, ending the game. Step 6. If you have made it this far, then congratulations, you have won the game. Step 7. In the future, you will feel the urge to play the game once again. It is best to bask in the knowledge that you beat the game and forget it exists. Do not play the game again. Once I had everything written down, I wanted to try the game for myself. I was so excited and proud of myself for what I had created. Being the angsty teen I was at the time, I chose to take inspiration from spooky games like Bloody Mary and Ouija boards. As a teenage mind tends to do, my thoughts wandered to the grandeur of bringing this game to school to share with my friends, making me popular for once. Following along with what I had written down, I chose my bedroom as my ideal enclosed space. My parents and siblings were occupied and away for the day, so I knew the house would remain empty for quite some time. Placing the Bose QC1 headphones I used for my PlayStation over my ears and taking a seat on the patterned rug in the middle of my room, I began to play the game. I began counting up. I made sure to proceed slowly and to enunciate each syllable in my mind, as to not mess up any detail of the game. I first felt it at around 29. Knowing the game I had just concocted held zero probability of being real, I thought it was just my imagination, but it started to steadily grow with each number I counted. By 42, it felt like something was crawling outside my bedroom door. I didn't dare open my eyes in perpetual fear, continuing to count on. At 49, thumps pattered around what I felt were the edges of my room. The thumps grew gradually and would occasionally feel closer to where I sat. I was stubborn enough to keep counting, but the anxiety of what I had started hung over me. As I made my way to 55, the stomps were like waves on a beach, waxing and waning around me. I began the final count. 64, 65, 66. Petrified, I counted 67. The vibration stopped. I could feel sweat beading on my forehead. The temptation to open my eyes and look around began to take over, but the curiosity of what would happen next kept it at bay. Just as I felt the relief of my game not being a reality, the stomping started up again. I could feel it moving towards me hastily. I felt the stomping through the floor. Right before the vibrations made it to my position, I opened my eyes. My once closed door now open was the only evidence of anything happening. Nothing was there. I took the headphones off my ears, wiped the sweat off my face, and looked around. As my auditory senses rushed back to me, my eyes drifted down to the carpeted floor. Foot impressions littered the space around me, like steps in the snow. I panicked and began to wipe away the evidence with my own foot, moving the strands of carpet back to their previous positions. As I did this, I realized that the prints left behind engulfed the size of my own. I continued to glide my foot back and forth along every square inch of the carpet until no evidence was left. That is all I remember from this event. Beyond that one singular memory, I don't recall ever trying the game again. Pretty successfully, I might add, I forgot its existence until now. Moving forward, I plan to forget it again, letting the stomping game, my very own Frankenstein's monster, live on in the minds of other brave participants. Unfortunately, the urge to play again is continuing to grow. Story 7. I'm an author looking for inspiration, but I found something I can't explain. I sit here, nursing the dregs of a now warm pint of golden cider, swirling it absent-mindedly while the pub around me sinks into the soft murmur of background noise. It's gone flat. Slightly metallic. I don't mind. I'm a writer. I like to think I am. That worn-out stereotype, blocked, bitter, prone to staring out of windows and romanticizing decay. Ideas come and go like birds on a wire. Sometimes they perch long enough to give me hope, but most of the time, they fly off the moment I reach for them. 9 times out of 10, I'm left blinking at a blank screen, frustrated, talentless, thirsty. University did nothing to change that. If it had, maybe I'd be like my former classmates, writing young adult trilogies with film options or working cushy remote gigs as content creators for vapid media outlets. I saw one of them post the other day about how they'd been paid to write 15 actors who vanished after one season of Peaky Blinders, and it got 30,000 likes. 30,000. And here I sit with a lukewarm pint and a blinking cursor for company. The Bodmer Arms is the kind of pub you forget as soon as you leave. Perched on the outer bend of a coastal road, it's a 35-minute drive to anywhere that might reasonably be called civilization. The village it anchors isn't even listed on some sat-navs. The pub floor is warped and stained in patches. Walls are crammed with dusty oddities, brass plaques, yellowed photos, signed rugby shirts, and that ever-present cricket bat over the bar that looks like it's been used more for breaking up fights than scoring runs. There's a peculiar picture near my usual table, one I keep staring at even though I don't want to. A man and a woman smiling broadly, each gripping what looks like a dolphin between them. Only, it's not a dolphin. Not really. Its flesh is dark red, almost veiny. It has no eyes, no fins. Just a long, lipless mouth and rubbery skin like wet leather. I tell myself it's some rare Amazonian species, but something about it makes my spine twitch. Still, I digress. I came here to get away. To write. To force something out of my tired, anxious brain. I arrived 4 days ago, checked into the tiny room upstairs, and planted myself in the corner booth beside the window. I opened my laptop with a flick of the lid and watched the cursor blink at me. Mocking. Silent. Empty. Outside, the sea was a blank stretch of gray, smudging into the horizon. Not a boat. Not a gull. Not even wind. Just a pair of buoys bobbing up and down like they were anchored to something trying to rise. Even the woman on the beach, metal detector in hand, seemed to give up before she began. I watched her wave it once, twice, then sigh and walk back to her car. That kind of town. Eventually, I shut the laptop with a slap, scraped my chair back, and wandered to the bar. The stool I chose had once been upholstered in velvet, maybe red. Now it was threadbare and brown, the sponge beneath poking out in crusted, flaky lumps. I adjusted myself into some semblance of comfort. The barman was in the back, watching Doctor Who on an ancient portable TV. I recognized the voice, Tom Baker, dripping sarcasm at a Cyberman. "Hello, mate," I called, my voice overly bright with performative cheer. "What ciders have you got on tap?" He sighed. Didn't turn around. "We've got cider. Beer. Or wine," he muttered, standing with the slowness of someone who's had enough of all things human. He waddled over, short, round, and sour-looking, and climbed a little step behind the bar to meet my gaze. "Right?" I said after a pause. "Cider'll do." I carried the pint back to my table and opened the laptop again, hoping, foolishly, that the cursor might have started writing in my absence. Of course, it hadn't. I went to the loo, more out of frustration than need. When I returned, 4 young men had taken the table opposite mine. Each had a pint in hand, and they spoke with the lazy rhythm of friends who had long since exhausted the need for introductions. I braced myself. I could smell the banter coming. But instead of stories about wild nights or Tinder disasters, the one in the black hoodie leaned forward and asked, "So, lads, who's got a tale to spin this evening?" The others chuckled. One nudged another. After some light-hearted arguing, the one with thick neon-framed glasses leaned back and cleared his throat. All right, he said. "Here's one for you. Mad one. Bear with me." He took a deliberate sip of his drink. "So this lad, Luke, goes camping with his missus. Long-time couple. Childhood sweethearts. But things had been rocky. That night, a big row. Massive. He finds out she's been cheating on him. With his best mate." A low whistle came from one of the others. "Ooh, bitch." "Yeah." So he storms off. Heads toward the cliffs to get some air. She follows, all apologetic. Says it meant nothing. Hugs him. Says she loves him. He pauses. Smiles grimly. Knife in the back. The table jumps. Even I flinch. She pushes him. Over the edge. He falls. Sees stars spinning. Cold wind in his ears. Then, nothing. Just the sea. And silence. The table is silent too. I glance at my laptop. Open it slowly. The cursor is still blinking, but suddenly it doesn't seem quite so cruel. The tale haunted me through the night. It wasn't just the twist, it was the way he told it. Earnest. Measured. As if he'd lived it. I took the bones of it and spun them into a short novella. Just a rough one. Posted it anonymously to a writing forum I used to lurk on. Inspired by a tale overheard in a seaside pub, I wrote. Within hours, it started gaining traction. Shares. Even a message from an old uni mate. "Mate, this is unreal. You finally found your voice." It felt like being seen for the first time in years. And so, of course, I went back. Day 2. Same table. At the same pint, I opened my laptop and waited. Sure enough, the group arrived, minus the storyteller from the previous night. No one acknowledged his absence. I didn't care. The lad with the shaved head and calm eyes took the lead this time. "This one's weird," he said. "But bear with me." He leaned forward, voice soft. "Sam. That's the guy's name. Out on a boat with a couple of mates. Sam's into boating. Take it seriously. The others, not so much. They're pissed about. He doesn't mind, just wants everyone to be safe." Then a wave hits. Big one. One of them falls in. Sam jumps in after him. Instinct, no hesitation. Gets him back to the boat. Another mate pulls him aboard. But Sam's not wearing a life jacket. He starts struggling. Arms flailing. Then, something grabs him. Not water. Not seaweed. A hand. Big. Cold. Clawed. He pauses. Pulls. Slowly. Not yanking. Like it knows it's won. I sit transfixed. Sam looks down. Nothing but gray. But he can feel it. Wrapping round his leg. Not knowing if this was real or a figment of imagination in these last fleeting moments, pulling further and further down, and then, the cold becomes warmth. Like a blanket. Like sleep. And Sam's gone. I wrote all night. Changed the names. Added some ambiguity. Kept the clawed hand. This one went viral. People messaged to say how it got under their skin. Asked when the full novel was coming. I told myself I was only borrowing the tales. Honoring them. That I was transforming pub chat into art. But really, I was feeding. Day 3. Only 2 lads now. The one in the hoodie, and the quiet one with the pale eyes. They sat in silence. No pints. No laughter. Then the hooded one said, "Tell me. What is your tale?" The quiet lad stammered. "I don't know. I don't know anything." "Then find one," the hooded figure said. "Know the story. Return when you are ready." The lad left. And then, for the first time, the hooded one turned to me. I didn't breathe. He stared, expressionless, then said simply, "Sometimes, reality is more compelling than fantasy." He stood and walked out. I stayed long after closing. Couldn't move. Eventually, the barman waddled over. "We're shut." I looked up. "Those lads, who are they? Come in every night, sit over there. You must have seen them." He frowned. "You've been the only one here most nights. You and the couple in the corner." I laughed. But he didn't. His face remained blank. No trace of irony. No hint of a joke. This morning, I returned again. The table by the window, their table, was occupied. An older couple sat there, heads bowed over an urn. The woman clutched a tissue. The man stared at nothing. I walked over to Yi, unsure why. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said gently. The woman looked up. Her face crumpled. "Thanks, love," she said. He used to come here with his mates. Loved this place." I felt the blood drain from my face. She sniffled. He died camping. Fell off the cliffs." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The door creaks open. The lad in the black hoodie steps in. But this time, he's not alone. A new group trails behind him. Older. Quieter. Faces pinched and pale. They sit. He doesn't look at me. I don't need to. I open my laptop. The cursor blinks. A story waits. And I will write about it. Story 8. They told us to stay inside. We should not have listened. The weekend it all began, I was completely disconnected. I decided to stay home, away from my phone, social media, everything. Just me, the couch, hot coffee, and the sound of soft rain against the window. Red Pine Falls was always like that on weekends, quiet, a bit forgotten, moving at its usual slow pace. I lived in an old apartment building, the kind that felt stuck in time. My neighbors were easygoing folks. The lady in 104 walked her dog every morning. The kid from B13 was always skateboarding in the parking lot. A couple down the street would fight loudly but always made up the next day. It was Sunday when I saw the alert. I didn't hear a sound. I just noticed a shift in the living room light, like something had flickered. I looked at the TV, which was off, and it had turned on by itself. The screen displayed a red background with static white letters. Emergency alert. Do not leave your home. Remain disconnected. Avoid windows. Await instructions. I grabbed my cell phone by reflex. It showed the exact same message. Same color, same font. No sound, no sirens, no explanation. Just that text. My first reaction was to laugh. It seemed like a system error. Maybe a poorly programmed test. The government often runs simulations, right? Especially in small towns like ours. But when I tried to change the channel, the TV froze. The power button didn't work. My phone also froze. The screen flickered, then went back to the alert. I restarted it, but the same warning reappeared, as if it were imprinted on the system itself. I looked out the window, expecting to see some movement, some collective response. But everything was the same. A few lights are on in the surrounding buildings, but no one is on the street. Not even the sound of the lady calling her dog, or the skateboarder, or the couple arguing. Just a thick silence, as if the world was holding its breath. I went back to the couch, phone still in hand. I tried to open any app, but nothing worked. Everything was frozen. I turned on the old radio on the shelf. As soon as it powered up, The announcer's voice was interrupted, and the same alert phrase began to repeat, like a soft, emotionless mantra. Do not leave your home. Remain disconnected. Avoid windows. I switched it off immediately. From that moment on, everything in me wanted to say it was just a technical glitch, a coincidence, but something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not a common silence. It was something heavier, as if sound had been drained from the town. Even the birds weren't singing. I got up slowly, opened the window, and looked outside. The sky was cloudy, but no sign of rain. The streets were clean, the houses exactly as they always were, but no one was in sight. No cars, no doors opening, no footsteps on the pavement. It seemed like everyone had simply vanished or decided at the same time to stay home. Even the lady from 104's dog wasn't barking anymore. The strangest thing was that the lights in most houses were still on, even in the morning. As if people were still inside, just motionless. I watched for a few minutes, waiting for some movement. When I noticed a curtain moving in the apartment across the way, I felt a surge of relief. But the relief was short-lived. The curtain moved with exaggerated slowness, as if being pulled by someone who wasn't quite sure what they were doing. And then, through the glass, I saw a face. It was Mr. Larkin from 202. He was just staring blankly at the sky, unblinking, expressionless. The curtain slowly dropped back down, and the window was closed. I went back inside and tried to make a call. I called my sister, then my friend Mark, and then the city's main line. All the numbers rang, but none answered. Until one call connected. My sister's name appeared on the cell phone screen. I answered immediately. Hello. Silence. Then a voice emerged, but it wasn't hers. It was low, soft, strangely calm. Everything's fine now. Stay home. Await instructions. I hung up immediately. I don't know why it scared me so much. It wasn't a threat. It was the tone. Too calm, too controlled, as if someone had been trained to soothe me. But I wasn't calm. And something told me I shouldn't be. Shortly after, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. It was the teenager from B13, the skateboard kid. But he didn't have his skateboard with him. He just walked slowly down the hall, looking at each door. He reached mine, paused for a few seconds, and then whispered something too low for me to understand. Then he continued walking to the end of the hall and disappeared down the stairs. I opened the door slightly and called out to him, but he didn't respond. He didn't even turn his head. That night was even stranger. The streetlights flickered, like a bulb about to burn out. In a moment of nervousness, I yelled out the window, asking if anyone knew what was happening. No answer. But in the distance, I heard the sound of a door opening. And then another. Suddenly, all over the block, several doors slowly began to open. People emerged from their homes, but they didn't speak, they didn't interact. They just walked silently into the street, looking up at nothing, as if they were waiting for something to fall from the sky. There was Mr. Larkin, standing in the middle of the street, still with that empty expression. The lady from 104 was beside him, with her dog, which was now lying motionless, eyes open. The teenager was there too. No one moved anymore. I stood there, watching, my heart pounding. And then, as if they'd received an invisible command, they all went back inside at the same time. I closed the curtains, turned off the lights, and sat on the kitchen floor. Something was happening, and it wasn't just a simple alert. No one seemed scared, and that's what bothered me the most. It was as if they had accepted a new rule, a new logic. And I was the only one who still hadn't figured out what it was. I woke up the next day with a strange feeling in my body. It wasn't pain or tiredness, but a kind of weight on my shoulders, as if the air was denser. The ceiling seemed lower. The silence was no longer strange. It was the new normal. I got out of bed with difficulty, drank some coffee that tasted like paper, and went to the door. When I tried to turn the doorknob, it wouldn't budge. I tried again harder. Nothing. It was locked from the outside. This made no sense. There was no lock on the outside of the door. At least, not that I knew of. I pushed, banged, forced. Nothing gave way. I went to the living room window and tried to open it, but I noticed the glass was different. It didn't reflect properly. It was as if a film had been glued to the outside. I grabbed a hammer from the cabinet and hit it hard. The glass cracked, then broke, and a cold wind rushed through the opening. But the air, it had a strange smell. It wasn't pollution or mold. It was sweet, almost perfumed, but artificial. A smell that made everything seem too clean, as if the world had been forcibly sanitized. I looked out through the cracks and saw the mailman. He walked slowly with regular steps, carrying nothing in his hands. He passed the mailboxes but didn't put anything in any of them. He just walked to the end of the street and stopped. He stood there, looking at nothing. I kept watching until he turned and came back the same way, at the same pace. As he passed my window, he looked directly at me. Not with surprise or shock. He just stared as if I were the strange one in this story. I closed the window and went to the kitchen. I turned on the microwave to heat up some food, but the panel showed something strange. Instead of numbers or functions, the same alert message appeared. The words were repeating. Remain at home. Await instructions. Everything's fine now. I turned the appliance off immediately. I looked around. The TV was off, but flickering as if trying to turn on. My laptop is no longer powered up. The radio played static, with small whispers I couldn't identify. I went to the door again. The doorknob is still locked. I began to wonder if someone had done that during the night. But who? And what? I grabbed a kitchen knife, not for protection, but because the idea of being trapped in my own home really started to weigh on me. Not because of the lack of freedom itself, but because of the absence of any explanation. Later, I heard noises in the hallway. Slow footsteps. Someone whispering. I approached the door and listened intently. The voice repeated, almost like a child learning a new phrase, "Everything's fine now. You're safe." I went to the peephole. It was the woman from 103. She was going from door to door, pressing her forehead against the wood and saying those words softly. Then she would smile and continue. Her face seemed too serene, as if she had achieved some forced peace. When she reached my door, she did the same, said the words, pressed her head, and stayed there for a minute. Quiet. Until she left. I stood motionless for a long time. When I finally managed to get off the floor, I noticed something even more unsettling. All the mirrors in the house, in the bathroom, the living room, and even on the back of the closet door, were fogged up. No windows had condensation. There was no steam. But the mirrors looked like they had been touched. And in the center of each, there was a mark, as if someone had written a single phrase with their finger, "Stay home." It was as if the message was trying to get inside me in every possible way. Through the screen. Through the sound. Through the smell. Now even through reflection. I didn't sleep that night. The world outside seemed mute. And inside me, something was starting to stir. It wasn't exactly fear. It was doubtful. As if a part of my mind was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, they were right. And that I really should just stay home. I was starting to lose track of time. Hours no longer passed as before. The sky maintained that grayish hue, neither night nor day, as if the world had been put on standby. Food was running out. The refrigerator light flickered, as if even the electricity was afraid to stay on. I no longer received new alerts, but the original message kept flashing on all the devices that still worked. Even the ones that were off. It had become a kind of ghost. On the fourth night, I heard knocking on the kitchen window. 3 dry taps. Then silence. I couldn't see anyone outside. Through the crack, I could only see the tall weeds of the community garden and the motionless outline of an abandoned car. But there was something about that knocking. It wasn't random. It was human. Measured. As if it was being used to get my attention, not to scare me. The next morning, a sheet of paper was pushed under my door. It was a handwritten letter, with shaky letters. It said, "If you still think for yourself, come down to the basement of Block C. Bring paper." No devices. It was signed only with a name, Clark. I thought of 1,000 ways this could be a trap. But in the end, the idea of staying there, trapped and alone, was worse. I exited through the laundry room window, which was in the back and still had a simple latch. I walked through the back of the buildings, keeping my head down. The silence followed me, but it was an oppressive silence, full of invisible eyes. I saw some people through the windows, empty faces, all looking inside their own homes, as if they had given up on the world. I reached Block C, where the basement was partially open, with a rock propping the door. I went down the stairs cautiously, and there, in the dark, I found Clark. A thin man, unshaven, wearing an old military coat and holding a flashlight. He didn't look dangerous, but he didn't look calm either. He led me to a corner of the basement, where 3 others were sitting on the floor with pads of paper, writing. Clark spoke softly, as if even the walls there could hear. "You saw the alert, right?" "Yes." "Then you're already compromised. But maybe there's still time." I asked what he meant by compromised. And that's when he explained everything. The alert we received wasn't a warning message. It wasn't meant to protect us. It was the beginning. The entry. The vector. They designed the alert to seem safe. Cold, direct, clean. But it was designed to fix itself in the mind. Repetition, color, tone. It wasn't sent to inform. It was sent to condition. He showed me a portable radio that had been disassembled. The wires were black as if burned. Every device that receives the signal is corroded. But not physically. The corrosion is mental. First you agree to stay home. Then you agree not to look out the window. Then you agree that you don't need to go out anymore. Until the thought of going out doesn't even exist. A woman in the group, with hollow eyes and trembling fingers, said her husband started repeating phrases a week before the alert. She said he had already received the call. And after that, he just smiled and said everything was better now. Clark showed me hand-drawn images, representing signal patterns, spiral waves, truncated texts. These shapes repeat in the visual alerts. They get stuck in the brain like a virus. Most people accept it. Some, like us, resist. But for how long? I remained silent. My stomach churned. The alert, which until then I had treated as a strange warning, was part of the contamination. There were no sirens because the threat wasn't external. It was inside everyone's head, planted there with a phrase and a color. Before leaving, Clark handed me a sheet of paper with notes. There was a hand-drawn map marking the center of town, where an old emergency transmission truck was located. According to him, that's where the signals were coming from. If you can shut that down, maybe there'll be time for the few who still resist. "What about you?" I asked. "I've seen the alert for too long." I returned home by the same route, avoiding the glazed eyes of those peeking through windows. Upon arrival, I closed all the curtains, turned off all remaining appliances, and sat on the floor, looking at the crumpled paper in my hands. For the first time, I felt there was something bigger than just a system error, and that my mind had been molding for days, perhaps from the very first moment I looked at that red screen. But now I know. In the following days, I started to notice that something inside me was changing. It wasn't physical. My body was still the same. I still looked at myself in the mirror with that expression of accumulated tiredness. But my thoughts, they began to repeat themselves. I noticed patterns in my own sentences. I would think something and, seconds later, repeat it in a low voice, as if trying to convince myself. Sometimes, I would write something in the notebook Clark gave me, and when I reread it, it felt like it wasn't me who wrote it. The words came too easily. Stay home. Everything's fine now. Avoid windows. I didn't want to think about it, but the thoughts came on their own, like an echo. I started to distrust myself. My own mind. And that's the kind of fear you can't run from. One night, I woke up with the sensation of being watched. The hallway light was on, even though I remembered turning it off. I went there and saw wet footprints on the floor. Small like bare feet. They went from the front door to the bathroom. I followed slowly, my heart pounding. The bathroom was empty, but the mirror was fogged up, and in the center, someone had written with their finger, "You're almost ready." That night, I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on the bedroom floor with the flashlight on, the kitchen knife beside me, and the notebook open. I forced myself to write something different. I tried to remember my sister's name, the town where I was born, my favorite food. But the more I tried, the emptier everything seemed. The memories were there, but they crumbled in the details. Like dreams told too late. It was as if the parts that made me up were being deleted one by one. The next day, I decided to go back to the basement to look for Clark. The door was ajar, as before, but no one was there. The place seemed abandoned for days, even though I knew I had been there a short time ago. On the floor, only a sheet of paper with a red spiral drawing. On the back, a phrase written in red pen, "The more you look, the more it understands you." From then on, I began to question if Clark had even existed. If that group of people was really there. Or if my mind, in an attempt to protect itself, created a fantasy of resistance to keep me functioning. But the map was still with me. The notes too. And the anguish wasn't a product of imagination. That I knew. On the way back, I saw a man standing in front of the building, looking at the sky. He was wearing a delivery uniform, completely dirty. His head was tilted back at a strange angle, as if his neck had locked up. The most disturbing thing was that he was smiling. Not aggressively. It was a serene, calm smile. Like someone who fully accepts what is about to happen. He slowly turned his head and looked at me. He didn't say anything. But the smile widened. I ran up the stairs, locked the door with all the furniture I could drag, and locked myself in the bathroom. I was breathing too fast. My hands were shaking. My thoughts were jumbled. I looked in the mirror and tried to repeat my name out loud. I couldn't. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Just that feeling that the name no longer belonged to me. I was someone, but I didn't know who. And the part of me that knew was already gone. In the following hours, I heard knocking on the door. It was rhythmic, soft, like the knocking on the window days earlier. And between each knock, a soft voice said, "You're ready now. Let me in." The voice sounded like my sister's. Or maybe my mother's. Or maybe my own. I can't tell. But it was familiar. And that's what scared me the most. I spent the rest of the night in absolute silence, trying not to think, not to hear, not to feel. But even with my eyes closed, I saw flickering images. The red background, the white letters, the repeated message. And when I opened my eyes, I realized I had written on the floor with charcoal from the stove, "Everything's better now." I didn't remember doing that. But the handwriting was mine. Or at least it was similar enough. When dawn broke, the sky seemed even more wrong. The light had no defined color, as if the sun was trying to rise, but something was blocking the last part of the morning. Time didn't pass correctly. My wristwatch spun the numbers as if it were in test mode. My cell phone battery had finally died. Even the silence seemed denser. I still had the map in my hands. The signal truck was marked with a circle in the center of Red Pine Falls, in front of the old radio station building. It was far and the path was exposed. But if I didn't go, I already knew my fate, to become another smiling body staring at the sky. I grabbed the notebook, a flashlight, a knife, and the remaining water bottle. I left through the back laundry room, the same way as before. The streets were empty, but not like an ordinary night. It was a programmed absence. As if someone had emptied the world so I would have no one to talk to. Halfway there, I saw a child standing on the sidewalk, alone. She was looking at the pavement, hands behind her back, humming something without a melody. When I passed her, she stopped singing. She looked at me and said in a low voice, "You're going there, aren't you? They know." And then she went back to singing. I stood paralyzed for a few seconds. I tried to ask who they were, but she just turned and went into the house next door without rushing. I kept walking, and the closer I got to the center of town, the more I felt like I was walking inside a glass corridor. The store windows displayed mannequins facing outwards, all with their faces covered by red cloths. This wasn't normal. This wasn't part of the decor. It had been placed there afterwards. By someone. Or by something that wanted to see me pass by. Finally, I reached the spot indicated on the map. The old radio station was locked, but behind it, in the empty lot, was the truck. A military vehicle, gray, without license plates. The windows were dark and the engine was off. Even so, the chassis vibrated, as if some machine inside was still operating. On the side, an LED panel flashed with the same message. "Remain at home. Await instructions." I approached slowly, my eyes fixed on the words. The feeling of being pulled was real. Not physically, but as if my mind wanted to get closer, understand, obey. When I put my hand on the doorknob, I heard a voice behind me. "Don't touch that." I turned and saw a man leaning against a wall, holding an iron bar. His face was dirty, his gaze tired. He was one of the locals I used to see at the market, but I couldn't remember his name. He approached. "Can you still think?" I nodded, unsure if it was true. "Then we have a chance." His name was Martin. He had been hiding in the city center's service tunnels, trying to track the signal. He told me more people had tried to destroy that truck, but they couldn't even get close. Most gave up halfway. Others simply stopped. With his help, we opened the back of the vehicle. Inside, it was worse than I imagined. There was no one, but there were screens. Many screens. And all of them displayed faces. Hundreds of faces of the town's residents, repeating synchronized phrases. Some screens showed house rooms, others showed empty streets. It was as if the truck was watching the entire town, recording every word spoken, every window closed. Martin started destroying the wires with the iron bar while I looked for the generator. The machine trembled as if trying to resist. When I finally cut the power cables, the screens flickered and began to shut down one by one. The sound of the voices diminished to just a whisper, and then, silence. But it wasn't the end. Martin stopped moving. He stood still in the middle of the truck bed, looking at the last screen still on. It was his face. But he was smiling. He fell to the ground shortly after. No scream, no struggle. He just fell. I rushed to him, but he had no pulse. His face still showed that serene smile. For a second, I thought I was smiling too. I put my hand on my face. It was normal. But the thought lingered. I got out of there as fast as I could, running through increasingly distorted streets. The houses seemed tilted. The trees seemed to be watching me. And the feeling of being followed never left me. When I finally reached the edge of the town, I no longer knew if I had managed to escape the signal, or if I was just carrying it with me. I stayed out of town for a while. Hidden in an abandoned shed on the outskirts of Red Pine Falls, eating the little I had saved and drinking rainwater. I thought maybe I had won, that the destroyed truck meant the end of the signal. But every night I heard something. Not outside the shed. Inside me. Low voices repeating the same thing. Not like a thought. It was deeper than that. As if my mind had been re-recorded by a program that was still running in the background. During the third day in that shelter, I noticed a red light flashing in the sky. It was a drone. Not a military one. Small, commercial. It came from the north, circled my position, and then left. The next day, another appeared. It wasn't a coincidence. They were still monitoring. They were still searching. That's when I understood. The truck wasn't the source. It was just one of the transmitters. Like one tower among many. The central hub was still active. And the hub was what fed the voices. I went back. I knew it was a stupid decision. But I needed to know where it was coming from. I walked back through the forest to the west side of town. What I saw paralyzed me. Red Pine Falls wasn't abandoned. On the contrary, it seemed in order. The lights in the houses were all on. The curtains were perfectly aligned. Some children were playing on the sidewalk. But the way they moved was too artificial. As if every gesture had been rehearsed. As if every resident was living a perfect simulation of their old life. And everyone was smiling. I found what I was looking for in the old part of town, near the disused train tracks. An emergency operations center had been set up in an old school. Inside, through a broken window, I saw cables, panels, antennas. And a room full of people. They were sitting in chairs, side by side, with headphones and monitors on. Their eyes were open, but unblinking. Some mumbled nonsense words. Others just took a deep breath and repeated, "You're safe now." There were no supervisors. No security. Just them, functioning like pieces of a living machine. I walked among them. None reacted. And in the center of the room, a single screen displayed an aerial view of Red Pine Falls. And at the bottom of the screen, a phrase silently rotated. Stable connection. Active transmission. I didn't know what to do. Unplug cables? Destroy equipment? Part of me just wanted to run. But another part wanted to sit there too. Put on the headphones. Be silent. Stop feeling. Stop being. But I forced myself to leave. On the way back, I saw my own face reflected in a storefront. I was sweaty pale, but something was wrong. My eyes weren't blinking. And there was a slight smile at the corner of my mouth. The same smile I saw on the mailman. On the delivery guy. On the child. Maybe I had already passed the point of no return. I fled the town that same night. Not by road, nor by the known trails. I cut through the dense woods, following only instinct and what was left of my free will. I walked for hours until the sound disappeared. Not the sound of the town, the sound inside my head. I found shelter in an abandoned cabin in the mountains. Since then, I avoid any electronic devices. I use candles, write by hand, eat what I can hunt or grow. I don't connect with anyone. Sometimes I see smoke on the horizon. Sometimes I hear voices that sound human, but I'm not sure. I never go to them. 6 months have passed. The signal is gone, but not the thoughts. I still dream of the phrase. I still wake up with the feeling that I'm smiling even when I'm not. Sometimes I forget my name for a few minutes. Sometimes I catch myself repeating phrases I didn't write. The world didn't end. But it changed. Red Pine Falls was just a test site. An experiment. Perhaps other places have already been corrected. Perhaps this is the new way to control people, not with force, but with quiet obedience. A screen. A soft voice. An order that sounds like care. If you saw the alert, even for a second, it might already be too late. Story, mine. When I was 10, my friends and I witnessed things we never should have. I'm sure if you lived in a small town like me, you had some sort of urban legend too. Maybe it was that the old man up the road killed his wife. Maybe it was a scary clown living in a gutter who killed kids. Whatever it was, it probably got less scary as you grew up and realized it was probably just older kids messing with you. But my town had something different. And I've been keeping it a secret for 19 years. It all started in the summer when my friends and I were 10 years old. We spent hours out by the creek or riding our bikes. It was, by all accounts, a typical childhood summer. Well, that all changed one day. It was me, my twin brother Ryan, and our friends, Gil, Laura, and Steven. We were exploring the woods trying to find a perfect location to build a fort when we saw something strange. A tunnel. It was overgrown and looked to be almost ancient. Relax, Steven said, sensing our unease. It's probably just an old sewer pipe. Or something. I don't know, Steve, Gil, our resident nerd, said. It looks really old, kind of like the ancient temples that I saw in my Nat Geo magazine. Blah blah blah, stupid Nat Geo magazine. Steven mocked. Whatever. It looks cool, let's go in. Before any of us could object, he rushed into the tunnel. It was decidedly not an old sewer pipe. It went on for seemingly miles, with all sorts of ancient artifacts that I'm certain we probably could have sold to a museum and be set for life. I studied anthropology in university, and the things I saw in here didn't resemble artifacts of any known civilization. That's what frightens me the most. We finally got to the end of the tunnel. And wouldn't you know it, Gil seemed to be right. At the end of the tunnel was a room, filled with gold and other offerings. A painting on the wall farthest from us depicted some sort of monster? Deity? God? I don't even know how to describe it. Below the thing were humans bowing down to it. There was writing on the wall, but it was in a language none of us recognize. Laura, when you get home, ask your dad for help with whatever this is. Gil said, reaching his hand out and feeling the painting. Laura's dad owned the library in our town and was probably the smartest guy here. Not a brag, considering our town was in a state with one of the highest illiteracy rates in the country. Laura nodded. I'll take a picture of it and show it to him after Mom goes to bed. She thinks I'm mowing my neighbor's lawns right now, she said, pulling her camera out. She took a picture of the writing but took a few more of the temple. We left and kind of thought that was the end. Maybe Laura's dad could figure out what it said, but honestly, I don't think any of us were that invested at this point. The next day, as Ryan and I were getting dressed and ready for another day of whatever bullshit we had planned to do, my mom called us down. Ryan, Michael, your friend wants to see you. We rushed downstairs and were shocked to see Laura, who usually had chores to do in the morning on her uncle's farm and would join us later in the day. She looked out of breath. "Guys, I have to show you something." She was clutching the photos that she had taken yesterday. "Did you get your dad to translate it?" Ryan asked. "Yeah. And I need to tell you. Come on." She pulled us out of our house, where Gil and Steven were already waiting. Basically, he said it's some extinct language from the Middle East. She explained. "The Middle East? We lived in America." Steven said. "Yeah, genius, we know. Shut up and let her finish." Gil nudged Steven. "And there's not really a direct translation," he said, "but it basically says that a god who gets forgotten will unleash his wrath on the world by destroying worldly treasures and something about making people remember. I'm not sure what they mean." "Wow. So we found an old temple for a god?" I asked. "We could be rich." "Well, that's not all. Look at some of the pictures I took." Laura pulled out some of her pictures. There was something in the background. It didn't look like any animal I've ever seen, but it wasn't exactly human either. It was tall, almost too tall for the frame. And it was staring right at us. "Are you sure that it's not just like a camera flare or something?" Gil asked. "Oh yeah, a camera flare that made a creepy monster show up, real smart," Ryan said, pushing Gil. As we walked around town, theorizing on what it could be, an old pickup truck pulled up next to us. "Laura, there you are, I've been looking for you everywhere." "Oh yeah, sorry Uncle I dash." "Whatever. Get in the truck. I need to show you something." Thankfully, her uncle let us all ride in the back of the truck and go with them. I mean, I've seen fucked up creatures be born here, but ain't nothing like this. Pardon my French. There, in the barn, was a baby goat, or what I assume was once a baby goat. It had sharp teeth, sharper than regular goats, and looked like its bones were all messed up. Weird thing is that it's still alive. Usually these things are dead by daylight. Laura's uncle said, bending down to inspect the goat. Even weirder still, I can't recall any of my goats being pregnant before last night. Like this thing just appeared. Well, I'll be off to milk the cow. Laura, let me know if anything happens to it. We all just stared at it in silence for a while. Unlike other deformed animals, it seemed to be doing just fine, thriving even. "This is weird, right? Like weird. Not cool weird," Steven remarked, and for the first time he didn't have anything snarky to say. "Totally. Maybe it has something to do with that thing we found yesterday," I said. We were all quiet for a while. No, it can't be. Just because some goat had a freaky baby doesn't mean the world is ending," Ryan said, walking away from the barn. "Let's go, Michael. This is stupid." I wish he was right. I would give anything for him to have been right about that. Because the next day, things got weirder for us. And the day after that, and the day after that. The next day, Ryan and I woke up with scratches all over us. Both of us blamed the other, but I think it was just wishful thinking. Deep down, both of us knew that no kid, or human for that matter, could have made cuts that deep. It was like a nightmare only my friends and I could witness. Laura's dad's library had its entire religious section set on fire, everything else untouched. There were no signs of break-in. Steven, who went to church on Sundays, would wake up extremely ill, only on church days, and be fine on Monday. Gil seemed to have it the worst. We actually didn't see him for a few days, which was out of the ordinary, so we went to check up on him. We entered his bedroom to find him in the corner, hunched over a book. It was massive and heavy-looking. "Gil," Steven said, looking concerned, which was unsettling to me because neither of them ever got along very well. He was startled. "Jesus, you scared me." "Wait, I shouldn't say that. Guys, come in. I need to tell you something." Slowly, we all stepped forward, unsure if it was a trap or not. I've been studying a lot of religions. I couldn't find anything about that temple we found. It's got to be a really old one. Like one that got forgotten a long time ago. "Dude, where is this going?" I asked. It hurt me and Ryan to move a lot. There were scratches everywhere. They seemed to be growing every night. So when the writing said that thing about being forgotten and punishing the people who forgot him, it looks like we forgot about whatever this god was a long time ago. And it's mad now. That's it, That's why Stephen gets sick before church, that's why your dad's religious books all burned, Laura, and I don't really know what the scratches are doing, but it's gotta be something. Do you guys need bandages or something? Because I have some if you need. Gil explained. Yeah, I could probably go for some. Ryan said, lifting his shirt up. I did the same. Wait a minute, Laura said. Guys, stand right next to each other. Our friends looked at us in shock. What, is it bad or something? I asked. Gil pushed us towards his mirror. Then we saw why they were so scared. This whole time, we hadn't seen it, and it had been right under our noses, literally. Across both of our chests, the scratches made a shape. It was a face? But it looked familiar. Laura, do you still have those pictures you took in the temple? She pulled them out of her pocket. That monster in the background of the picture she took. It was there. The same faces on our skin and in the photo. Okay, this is messed up, man. I gotta go. Stephen stammered, and he ran out of Gil's room. We watched him run away through Gil's window. I'm scared, he said sheepishly. I feel like we did something by going in that temple. Something bad. The next day, I guess he was proven right. Stephen didn't get home last night. There was a whole search for him and everything. No sign of him anywhere. That night, Gil, Laura, Ryan, and I all met up at Laura's uncle's farm. We walked through the fields, trying to clear our heads. Suddenly, we heard a weird noise from the barn. As we went in to investigate, we saw that weird deformed goat again. Even though it was only a few weeks old, it already looked fully grown. It looked at us. I don't know how to explain it, but its eyes. They didn't look like a normal animal's eyes. It pushed past us and started to walk away. I honestly have no idea what came over the four of us. With everything that was going on, we probably weren't in the right headspace, plus us being stupid 10-year-olds didn't help. We followed it all the way into the woods, and back where it all started. That god-forsaken tunnel we never should have gone down. As the deformed, spiny goat led us down, we heard something. Chanting. At the end, in the room with the painting, was Stephen. He was moving, bowing down to the deity, just like all of the people in the painting were, and chanting in some strange language, but he didn't look alive. His eyes seemed dead, like he was possessed. Stephen, Laura said finally. He looked up at us, tears in his eyes, and shook his head. It took us until then to realize the goat was gone. I opened my eyes for just a second, a choice I regret all the time. In its place, I saw something I'm not sure I can explain, to this day. It was the thing in the picture. Horns, like a goat, massive in stature. The same thing on the painting. It was the god. Guys, I said under my breath. We have to go. Leave as quietly as you can, I'll get Stephen. Laura and Gil began to sneak out of the temple, but Ryan stopped me. I'm helping too. Together, we tried to grab Stephen, who was bowing to the god. It towered over us, seemingly basking in the feeling of being worshipped again. Come on, dude. Let's go, Ryan said, trying to pull him up. Stephen looked at us for a moment, shaking his head again. You heard that stupid thing Laura's dad translated. If it gets forgotten, bad shit will keep happening. As long as I'm here, it's not forgotten. Just go. I promise it'll be okay. What? No, I can't leave you, you're my friend. Is it? And you're my friends, dude. This is what friends are for. This is gonna sound stupid, but I love you guys. Please go, I don't want you getting hurt. Ryan and I stood in silence, not wanting to leave him. Are you deaf? Go, I said go. Before it makes you stay too. We ran, only looking back when we were fully out, Gil and Laura waiting for us. Thanks, Steve, I said, holding back tears. All the adults told us the same thing. That we had seen something we shouldn't have, and that whatever we think we saw was just our brains trying to protect us from what actually happened. That they searched all over the woods, and that there was no temple. Laura's dad and uncle didn't even believe us. They chalked it up to our imagination. Life went on, and we all grew apart, only seeing each other a few times a year. We don't really talk about that summer much. I mean, we all think about it, sure, but I don't think any of us want to be reminded of it. One day, we had met up for dinner at Gil's place, and he wanted to show us something. In his basement was a shrine. A painting of that fucking entity decorated the walls. His two young kids sat, praying to it. Dude, what the fuck? Laura asked. This is insane. No, you guys don't get it. What Steven did was great, and it bought us some time, but he's not going to live forever. What happens in 20, 30 years when he dies, huh? He'll be forgotten. What happens when we die? As long as he's not forgotten, we're safe, right? Now sit down with us and pray. I'm not going to dash. Pray. Gil demanded. Laura, Ryan and I got out of there pretty quick. So, why am I writing this? Well, that thing's rules were pretty clear. As long as he's remembered, everything is fine. And there's nothing more permanent than writing. So, if by some chance somebody finds this at some point in time, maybe think a bit about what you remember and what you forget. Story 10. My daughter is missing in Whitehall National Park. My daughter went missing a week ago. No one seems to have noticed. They look at this thing like it's my daughter. But I know better. I was there when whatever wanted her took her away. Replaced her. My husband and I have been going through a rough patch since the beginning of this year. Small things were building to be larger arguments, until we didn't want to be around each other day to day. Separation was looming, but we were doing everything in our power to keep that at bay. One random evening, after a long argument, I felt a call to our garage. While sorting through totes full of dead air and stored away winter clothes, I found a tote full of our summer memories from when our daughter was 5 years old. We had been happy then. Arguments were non-existent in our home. There seemed to be too much warmth there for them to cultivate. We would plan fun dinners and even more joyful outings. It felt like it was ages ago, when in reality it was just a few years past. While flipping through the stacks of albums and drawings from our daughter, I found a feather. It looked to be a hawk feather, or something closely related, but larger and freckled with deep black spots. My husband had found it while we were camping at Whitehall National Park. It had been laying on our camping gear when we had awoken one morning. He packed it away carefully, as a memento from one of our many camping trips. We had done research on it when we had gotten home, but had never been able to place the bird it fell off of. I brought it into our dining room, laying it on the kitchen table while I prepared dinner. Later on we sat together, with masks of a happy family on our faces for our daughter, while eating our chicken and broccoli amalgamation. My husband had been absent-mindedly staring at the feather while eating, before he announced that we should go camping again, like we used to. The excited gaggle of incomprehensible words our daughter let out was enough for me to agree, even if I did not feel up to being feasted on by deer flies that weekend. Her excitement could light up a room. It was hard to say no. Before we knew it, it was Friday, and we were packed and heading to Whitehall. Our daughter's excitement had gotten to us. We were becoming more and more keen on the trip as we got closer. Maybe this would be the thing that brought us back together. We found a spot near the Whitehall River, a spot that was sought after but surprisingly void of campers when we arrived. It was private, much deeper into the forest than the other campsites. We set up our area, and then traversed the trails looking for dried sticks to build our fire. Our daughter took off ahead of us, wanting to lead the way on our small adventure. My husband lightly grabbed my hand, leaving room for me to remove it, but instead I grasped it as we walked. It felt right. Soon enough we had enough sticks to start a fire, so we headed back to our campsite, our daughter once again leading the way. She had found a feather exactly like the one we found in the past. She was waving it in front of her like a conductor as we walked. We sat together around our small fire, while our daughter asked us 1,000,001 questions about how grass got its color, or how the stars sat so close together, or if trees could feel love, and with each question we answered as well as we could. She started to zone off as the fire got warmer and the night got darker, and soon enough she was sleeping in her small camp chair. We carried her off to our tent, and came back out to talk and watch the fire crackle some more. I never felt myself fall asleep, but I did feel my husband shaking me awake. Violet isn't in the tent, is the thing that knocked me out of my tired stupor. I followed behind him to check, as if he would ever make up such a gross joke. I only really believed him when I laid eyes on her disheveled sleeping bag. Immediately we started yelling her name, getting louder and louder as we heard no answer back. My mind kept telling me she'd be around this corner, or she would be in this pile of drying brush, but each time there would be no sign of her. There were no footprints or scuffles in the dirt. The sun was still deep in the mountains, it wouldn't be lit out for hours, and our girl was deeply afraid of the dark. She would never leave our campsite, at least not of her own volition, but there were no signs of someone struggling to take her away. She was a smart one. She'd never just follow someone deep into the forest without waking us. My husband decided to head to the front of the park to get the rangers. He kept trying to call their emergency number, but the lack of cell service kept rearing its ugly head. He took off in our small SUV as fast as he could, leaving me alone to scream and search for her. Soon enough the screaming became pleading, begging the forest to bend until I could see her and know she's safe. While searching I found myself going deeper into the brush, not really caring at this point if I got lost with her. I found myself in a small clearing. It felt like it was perfectly shaped into place in this forest, even though no logging or cutting was allowed here. Sitting in the middle of the clearing, I could see a small hunched form. Their back was arched, unnaturally deep in its bend, with an oddly shaped shirt covering the bottom half, and their long dark hair was hiding their face from view. Rushing over I was sure it was my daughter, my Violet, but once I reached her, my mind could not catch up with what I was seeing. There aren't really any words to describe what was happening before me. The hunched form was holding its ankles, its face hidden between its knees while small muffled whines came from it. Its hair was shortening itself, the follicles eating at the length and pulling it back into its roots. The part of its spine that I could see was shaping itself, forming and cutting against the papery skin along its back until it joined the arch of the person hunched with it, popping itself into place when it found the bend it wanted. It sounded awful, painful, and so loud in this open space. What I thought was a shirt was actually feathers, molting and popping themselves off the thing's back, leaving white pockmarked pale skin in its place. The holes pulled themselves closed, sinew reaching across the space until only skin was left. It heard me come upon it. I could see it try to pick its head up from its spot to look at me, but their rigid neck kept their head in place until it was done doing what was needed. My mind told me to run away, but my feet kept me firmly in place. The only thing I could do was witness this transformation. I'm not really sure what else to call it. Once the spine had found its home, their legs began forming, cracking in and out of place in a painful show. The form finally pulled its head away, in what seemed to be agony, but there wasn't really any way to tell. Its mouth hadn't formed yet. When it moved its head back, seemingly to wail, there were only eyes, one much bigger than the other. The rest of its face was moving. Its cheekbones would push out and then pull themselves down the pale unmarked skin, and then back into place under their eyes. Their lower lash line would reach down so deep into their face, over the moving cheekbones and away from the raw red of their sclera, before making its way back to where it liked. Their legs kept cracking, lengthening and shortening themselves, almost unable to find the right place until the soft tissue of their knee rippled and kept the bone where it wanted it. I never saw the mouth form. Their legs kept my full attention until I heard a guttural gasp enter the space around us. Looking up, trailing my eyes across moving skin and tissue connecting, my eyes found the creature's mouth. It was open, in a mimicry of a cry, but it just couldn't take that shape yet. Or it didn't know how to. Finally, the lips found their shape, broken and plastered across a deeply white face, and too close to their eyes to make sense. The gums inside started to bleed heavily, leaving rivers down the sides of its cheeks, until one by one, pockets opened up to push rounded teeth out. This seemed to be the most painful part for the writhing thing, its scream finding its way out of its throat and into the clearing. The noise pushed me out of my frozen daze. A primal part ticked away at my very cells until I threw my body to run back to the cleaning opening. I turned myself away, falling when my feet couldn't catch up with my mind. Pushing myself up, I didn't look back as I started to make my way in any direction that was away from that thing. Until I heard it try to say something so familiar it stopped me almost dead in my tracks. Unmistakably, and in a voice I've heard since my daughter could speak, the thing pushed out the words. Ma. I looked around, hoping to see signs of my husband, or a sign of anything that belonged in the world I knew before seeing this thing. My eyes found the only shape of a person in the treeline, my Violet. She was standing there, next to something unimaginably tall, crooking itself down so it could reach her hand better. She looked terrified. I screamed out her name, but it was as if she couldn't see or hear me. She was staring at the monstrous form behind me, watching it take its shape. I threw myself in her direction, leaving the squirming thing behind me. As I was getting closer, the form holding her took a step back into the reaching dark, the black seeping around them like a mist, taking my unwilling daughter with it. She fought to get away, but the form had no issue pulling her along. Finally, I had made it to the trees she was in the middle of, the dark seeping away, leaving only the forest. While searching for any sign of her, something grabbed me from behind and pulled me back into the clearing. I started clawing and pushing away, until my husband's face came into view, terrified but with a sheen of relief plastered across it. As I was about to tell him everything that I had seen, my eyes looked past him and saw the rangers wrapping a blanket around a small girl in the middle of the cleaning. My daughter's eyes were staring back at me. That thing had found its shape finally. That shape was my sweet girl, Violet. The scream that released from me was unbidden. I started to push myself away from him once again, the relief changing into terror as I fought to get away. I learned later an EMT had joined the Rangers with my husband and administered a sedative to me. They all thought the panic had caused me to go into some sort of episode. How do I tell them the thing sitting in the ambulance with us isn't my daughter? That my daughter was still out there, in the dark forest? I tried to tell my husband, whispering to him what happened in case the thing could hear, but he just seemed to get more incredulous as I spoke. How could he believe me, when the thing sitting 2 feet away looked so much like her? It talked like her, joked like her, questioned the EMTs exactly like my daughter would. I started to believe that maybe I made the whole thing up, until we got home. Small things weren't right. This Violet hated foods my daughter adored. She didn't have certain scars my daughter had, or they were misshapen and slightly above their original spot. Her freckles were darker and sat higher on her cheeks than they used to. My husband would stare at her sometimes. Her mannerisms made her seem like a stranger at moments. It felt like he was starting to realize she wasn't right, but then she'd do something unmistakably Violet and he'd laugh it off and go back to his normal routine. This thing was not my daughter, and I was the only one who knew or cared. Even the thing didn't seem to understand it. It would spend its day acting as Violet did. It would go to school, come home and eat dinner with us, ask us to read stories and stay up late to watch SpongeBob on TV. Sometimes I would find it staring off, either out the windows or into space, as if it was entranced. It would feel me watching and shake itself out of its stupor, and ask me a question only Violet could come up with. A few days after it all happened, I couldn't take it anymore. I left late in the night and found myself driving back to Whitehall. I was the only one who knew she was still out there, alone and scared. I had to find her, even if it meant I got lost in the deep black forest with her. I searched for hours, until it became light, and until the light turned into a humid burn from the sun. My husband found me at the trailhead, sweaty and dirty, almost 11 hours after I had left. He had used a Find My iPhone feature to see where I was. He held me as I sobbed. While he thought of how he was losing his wife to insanity, all I could think about is how we lost our baby to a feathered thing in the forest. Story 11. There's someone in the vent talking to my son. And it says I'm not his real father. We moved into this house 3 months ago. A modest 2-story place in a quiet New Hampshire town. Trees out front. A backyard just big enough for Ethan to run around in. It even had one of those old metal air vents in the upstairs hallway, square, waist height, probably from the 50s. When the central air kicked in, it made a soft hum. It was charming, in that way old things are when you haven't lived with them in a long time. Ethan, my son, is 5 years old. He loves dinosaurs, hates carrots, and has one of those hyperactive imaginations you laugh about with friends until it stops being funny. About a week after we moved in, he started kneeling near the air vent. At first, I figured he was just feeling the breeze on his face, something I used to do as a kid. But after a while, I'd catch him whispering. Or worse, just listening. "Hey, buddy," I said one time, kneeling beside him. "What are you doing?" "I'm talking to the Whisper Man," he said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Chills. "Who's that?" "He lives in the vent. He tells jokes. He's funny." That night, I laughed it off with my wife, Emily. We figured he was just adjusting to the new place. maybe a little lonely, making imaginary friends. But a week later, I heard from him again. Late at night. Around 2 a.m. I opened his bedroom door and found him sitting in the dark hallway, back to the vent, whispering. Listening. Whispering again. "Ethan," I said too loud in the silence. He flinched like I'd caught him stealing. "Bedtime, champ. It's really late." He nodded and stood without a word. I watched him shuffle back to bed and crawl under the blanket. Just as I turned to leave, he said, "He doesn't like you." I froze. "Who?" "The Whisper Man. He said your voice is all wrong." My skin crawled. I didn't respond. Just closed the door and went straight to our bedroom, where I lay awake most of the night. Things got worse next week. Ethan's personality started to shift. Not in some huge, dramatic way, just subtly. He began asking strange questions. Do people still scream when you cut their eyelids off? What color is blood when it gets old? I scolded him, of course. But he just shrugged like I was the weird one. At dinner, he once asked Emily if she thought her skin would come off in one big piece or little tiny pieces. She laughed nervously. I didn't. Then came the drawing. He left it on the fridge, stuck under a smiling cow magnet. A crayon sketch of 3 people, a woman, a boy, and a tall, faceless man standing in front of a big square. The vent. He had written family above them. There was no dad. A few days after Tay drawing, I confronted Ethan about the Whisper Man. "So, who is he really?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Someone from TV?" He looked up at me and I swear to God his eyes looked darker. Not the color, just darker. He told me I'm not allowed to say his name, he said. He said your brain would start bleeding. Okay, buddy. That's enough. He said you don't belong here. I crouched down. Listen to me. There's no one in the vent. It's just old metal and air. It's not real. He leaned in close enough that I could smell something sour on his breath. He told me you're not my real dad. I blinked. What? He said he took the real one last month. You're just wearing him. I swear, my blood turned to fire in my veins. I grabbed his small shoulders tighter than I should have. Don't say things like that. He stared at me, unblinking. I want my real dad back. That night I searched the entire house. The attic, the crawlspace. I even unscrewed the vent cover and shined a flashlight inside. Nothing. Just dust, dead spiders, and old cobwebs. But when I leaned in, really leaned in, I swear I heard something. Not a voice. A rhythm. Like wet breathing. I pulled back and shut the cover. Emily left last weekend. Not permanently, but she took Ethan to her parents' place. For a break. She said I was scaring him. Said I was acting paranoid. Distant. That Ethan had bruises on his arms. I've never laid a hand on him. Not once. But I did grab him that one time. Too hard, after what he said. I tried to explain. But when I said the word, whisper, she froze. Looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She said Ethan told her the Whisper Man only talks to him because Daddy's meat is too old to hear properly. What the hell does that mean? She left with tears in her eyes. Said we needed space and that I should talk to someone. Now it's just me in the house. And the vent. Last night. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it. Not whispers. Laughter. Children's laughter. Coming from the hallway vent. I shut off the water and froze. It went on for 5, maybe 10 seconds. Then silence. I stepped into the hallway, barefoot on cold wood. The vent was open. The screws were scattered on the floor. I didn't remove them. Inside the vent, carved into the metal with something sharp, was a message. You're using it wrong. I dropped to my knees. I don't know how long I sat there. Today, Ethan came home. Emily had to grab a few things, so she left him with me for a few hours. Against her better judgment. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Just sat on the living room floor, drawing. Eventually, I sat next to him. What are you drawing, buddy? He showed me. It was a picture of me. Only my face was peeling off like a mask, revealing something pale and boneless underneath. A white shape with no eyes and too many fingers. He had written one word beneath it, pretender. He looked at me and whispered, "He said you're going to remember soon." That was an hour ago. He's dozing upstairs now. But here's the thing. Here's the part that keeps hammering in my skull like a loose tooth. I don't remember last month. Not completely. Not clearly. I remember driving home from work one day and then, nothing. And then it's just me, in this house, helping Emily unpack. Taking Ethan to the park. There's a gap. A tear in the film reel. And sometimes I wake up already standing. Once I found dirt in my mouth. Another time, blood under my fingernails. Just a little. Not enough to matter. Until today. I found something behind the water heater in the basement. Something wrapped in plastic. Rotting. I only unwrapped enough to see the mouth. It was mine. My real mouth. My real face. The one I'm not wearing anymore. I'm not writing this to ask for help. I'm writing this because I think the Whisper Man is real. I think Ethan is the only one who can hear him, because he's pure. Untouched. I think the thing in the vent got me, put me on like a Halloween costume, and is still trying to settle in properly. But I'm waking up too much. Fighting back. Maybe that's why it's slipping. Why I found the body. Why does Ethan keep drawing things he shouldn't know? I hear it now. The laughter. I think it knows I remember. I think it's coming to finish the job. If you find this message, check your vents. And for the love of God, don't listen if something whispers back. Story 12. I got catfished? Kinda. Okay, Sue, I'm still a bit traumatized from this dating app mishap because it literally just happened yesterday, so, bear with me while I collect my thoughts and try to prevent myself from crashing the fuck out. I got catfished. I've been catfished before, you know, by men lying about their heights, their cock sizes, their faces, and whatnot, but never, ever, ever have I been catfished like this. Good. My fingers are literally shaking as I type. Okay, so it all started when I matched with this guy who had a resting, Sigma face in all his pics. I assumed it was satire, like all those Sigma TikToks, and I kinda got excited at the idea we were on the same, brain-rotten wavelength. I tested the waters by breaking the ice with, "What's up, Susie Baka?" And tell me why this MF replied with, "Salutations, milady." He was being dead serious too. How do I know that? Well, when we met, he kept the same energy, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, that Fedora reply was the first red flag. The second was when he sent a dick pic right after I asked how he was doing. His dick was huge, hairy, veiny, and covered in forbidden cheese. To make matters worse, the caption read, "I'm doing horny, how are you doing, milady?" I should have stopped texting him there, but obvious fucking ly I didn't. Well, the dick pic turned me on. My pussy throbbed pussingly. And it kept throbbing when, fast forward, he was sitting across from me at the McDonald's we agreed to meet in. His Sigma face was as Sigma as ever with those curled up, bushy brows, those puckered lips, hollowed cheeks, and that sharp, mu-eye jawline. He even had his hands steepled like Andrew Tate. I felt like a beta on seeing him, but it was whatever because I still thought, at the time, that it was satirical until it wasn't. When I said, "Hey, don't you think it's about time to drop the act? I want to get to know you," he tilted his head down and a shadow was cast over eyes like an anime character. He started laughing maniacally and said, "What act, milady?" He smiled and his teeth, they were sharp. His canines grew like Pinocchio's nose, and he randomly jumped up on the table to howl before announcing, "Oi, beca," like that cringy video of that one kid in Spanish class. Everyone, excluding me, ran out of the McDonald's while screaming for dear life. I was just shell-shocked. The white of my eyes probably took up the entire upper half of my face. He tore his shirt, exposing a hairy chest, and he kept howling and laughing, and then he looked down at me like the beta I was and said, "The one. Who knocks?" On hearing that, my stomach dropped and I literally sprinted all the way home where I cried and shivered my timbers to sleep. As soon as I woke up, I logged onto Reddit to type this. I'm never going on dating apps again. For my sanity. Story 13. The line dance at the major steakhouse chain isn't what you think it is. To cut to the chase, family's in town and they have awful taste. We ended up at the steakhouse. The staff escorted us to a giant section, We order, my uncle decides to tell the staff it's my grandpa's birthday, a total lie. And they make him sit on a horse toy he barely fits on. My dad gets in trouble with my aunt for blowing a straw wrapper at her eye, yada yada. Everything, except the food, was great, and then that fucking cowbell rang, ending my old world and birthing a new. I never thought something as simple as an obnoxious noise could possibly be so life-changing. A waitress in a steakhouse-branded cowboy hat, available in the souvenir shop, zoomed by and coaxed me to go up and do the obnoxious line dance bullshit, and my family, being incredibly supportive people, began to peer pressure me. I thought about Grandpa sitting on that stupid horse and decided to be as good a sport as he had been. Cautiously I rose. Step after step, I silently approached, hoping to slink unseen by the endless faces. The sadistic whooping and hollering from my bloodline made that impossible. The wicked beast who'd so mercilessly tore my agency from me, like the nearly faceless mob drooling around us, cracked the shells from their crustaceous prey, sneered at me. Mirth in her eyes as I stumbled forward into the blinding lights at the center of the steakhouse. I had never line danced before. For the second time that night, my agency had been stripped. My feet began to move against my will, and for what felt like an eternity, I had become a toy to puppeteer to some calf-faced child god. I awkwardly fumbled back to my seat as the song ended, feeling hazy and used. Though the siren's call had stopped in my ears, it had not stopped in my head. It had not stopped in my heart. I couldn't hear my own thoughts, nor could I hear the words spoken by my family. I could only quietly sit and stare at my meal as sweat continuously poured from me. After we had left, the song began to quiet. My thoughts returned, and the further from the hell pit I traveled, the more my thoughts drifted back. Most of them were from that damned restaurant. Upon returning home, I found myself restless, unable to sleep. Instead, I began to compulsively scribble out a resume. The next day, despite my fear and apprehension, I walked through those doors yet again to the demonic stench of searing muscle. In my mind, visions of the dead and flames danced as one for all eternity. A man in a hat representing the restaurant looked at me as I held my folder with both hands like a small child waiting my turn in line for a completed test. "Why, you're hiring?" Yeah, guess so." He called over another employee who then escorted me to the door of the manager. The employee knocked, and upon the door opening and the manager inviting us in, introduced us, and then left. The manager, Mr. Freeman, was vampiric in visage. His widow's peak of black hair sat abnormally symmetrical and straight atop his pale, gaunt head. His purplish thin lips seemed almost as if they were hiding fangs. His business suit added to the darkness of the bags under his eyes. "So, you want to work at our steakhouse?" He tapped my papers on his tabletop to straighten them. Yes, sir." He nodded, speaking clearly and professionally. Manners are quite important in our staff. So few seem to have them these days. He hyperanalyzed me for approximately 30 minutes, asking questions about my past, my accolades, my psychology. When he was finally satisfied sucking my brain dry, he simply said he'd call me in a week if I were deemed suitable to either bring food to the screeching and screaming denizens of this place, or to bake in the back room above fire and flesh. I stepped through the door back into the noisy chaos of the establishment. I was just about to leave when I heard the cowbell. Immediately, I became drawn. The music rose loud, but below it all, I heard something from a door marked "Employees Only." A wail of pain. Instinctively, I looked left, then right, and hopped over the counter. Quickly, I entered the door to be greeted by a seemingly endless dark red carpeted, dimly lit staircase. I scrambled down them, unable to hear anything over the clapping of shoes and the heinous shrieking of the music above me. I ran down the stairs so fast I fell down many of them. I was fine with that. I'd have nowhere to hide if someone began to ascend. In what felt like 60 days but was probably only about 60 seconds, I stumbled down to the floor. Carefully, I peered from around the corner of the stairwell. The first thing I saw was that the carpet continued up the walls and even across the ceiling. The second thing I noticed were the bright overhead lights. Workers busily skirted around like ants, some pushing wheelbarrows of meat, some pouring said meat into a giant metal drum before a large stage where the rest of the workers down here worked. In the center of the stage lay a 20-foot-tall bull with one long and one short horn atop his massive head. A massive brand, a symbol I had never seen before, interrupted his golden blonde fur, which glinted in the light each time it recoiled in pain as the workers sliced strip after strip from him. His flesh immediately regrew, which seemed to hurt him just as much as having it cut out. When the music was over, the workers ceased their mutilation and began packing the meat to be sent up a dumbwaiter to, presumably, the kitchen. I watched in shock and horror as the cow lowered his face into the metal drum and consumed his own flesh. In his eyes, a deep and complex sorrow that I'd never seen on a living creature before and I pray exists nowhere else. Dazed and in a dreamlike state, I trudged back up the stairs without incident. When I had finally arrived at the doors to my freedom, I heard something behind me. The worker who had escorted me to the manager. "Hope to see you again, cowboy. Maybe we'll be co-workers next time." I turned and stared at him blankly, causing his warm smile to dissolve into the face of confusion, his head still holding the cap all employees were required to wear, the gold outline of a cow printed directly to every forehead. Story 14. I walked into a place I never should have walked into, and now my life is in danger. Before I start, you need to know that this text is your death sentence. They will know you are reading this, and they will be coming after you just like they're coming after me. Prepare yourself, they see everything. Good luck. My name is Escobar. If somehow you are reading this message now, they're probably reading it too. I'm speaking from Brazil, but if this conspiracy goes as far as I think it does, the world map is probably manipulated to keep you and me under control. And if you still don't understand what I'm talking about, then my message has reached its receiver. Have you ever felt like you are simply excluded from social circles where everyone else fits in? I have. I've always been treated like I'm different. People just seemed to think that I had some mental health problems, and now I know those people were just bad actors. I was hired as the night guard of my city's government building. They told me my job was to patrol the interior of the building and the backyard because drug dealers and addicts were using that unsupervised place to smoke and sell narcotics. Very dumb choice of place, by the way, and especially because of some vandals that had been causing trouble. I'm a tall and relatively strong guy, so some rebellious teenagers shouldn't be a big deal. After 4 months on this job, the security guard from the afternoon shift called me to say he had forgotten the security camera key hanging on the door. We usually bring all the keys to the staff room and put them in the key drawer, so he told me to get the camera key and take it there when I finished my shift. I usually don't even remember those keys exist, since I don't use them during my shift, only the main key and the backyard key. I hadn't been instructed to patrol only the main rooms and the backyard, and I even had access to the key drawer. The only rule I had was, do not patrol the second floor. And honestly, it had been boring these last few weeks, just walking from one place to another. So I decided to supervise the building using the cameras. That was my most horrible mistake. An hour had passed since I turned on the monitor, 1:23 a.m. There are 32 cameras in total, but only 14 are on the ground floor, the halls, the front of the building, the meeting rooms, the staff room, and the main office. I always thought it was strange that I was hired to protect the building but only had permission to observe specific places. While taking a sip of my sugar-free coffee, I noticed a small rope sticking out from the monitor. Thinking it was one of the screen's wires, I tried to fit it back into the monitor, but it just fell off. The rope was tied to a small plastic rectangle that had been covering part of the back of the screen. I checked the back of the monitor to see if I had broken anything. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I hadn't. All I found was a small, tablet-like screen that had been hidden behind the plastic piece I removed. Not thinking too much, I turned on the tablet. It didn't even have a menu, it just immediately opened 4 additional cameras, probably used by the morning shift guard. Of the 4 cameras, only one worked. Camera 3. It showed the management room on the second floor, a place I wasn't allowed to go. Before I even had time to think, hey, I was told not to supervise this place, the camera detected movement. It was Pietra, the popular girl who studied with me. She had always treated me badly during school. She was wearing a beautiful and expensive all-black outfit, with a skirt that reached just below the knees. I remembered that I was the security guard, and a lot of questions popped into my mind. How did she get in? Why did she come here? What is she doing? I watched her for a bit. She moved her finger carefully across the surface of the manager's desk, which caused it to move and open a hidden hole in the ground. Maybe it's a secret safe for the manager's valuables, I thought. I sprinted to the key drawer and grabbed the management room keys, then ran to the second floor. Getting the keys was useless, because the door was already unlocked and opened with the pressure of my hands as I tried to insert the key. No one was in there. The management desk was in place like always. I looked to the corner of the room where the camera was supposed to be, but all I saw was concrete. Am I going crazy? I felt fear for the first time in this job. I had never experienced a possible break-in. Everything had always been calm. I reached for my radio to call the authorities. I don't know why I hadn't done this earlier, but with my hands shaking, the radio slipped from my fingers and shattered on the ground. Shit. I had never said that word with so much feeling before. I looked at the opened management desk with a bit of curiosity. If the girl had gone somewhere, it had to be through that hole. Or, in the best-case scenario, I was just hallucinating. I rubbed the desk surface with my fingers, trying to imitate what I saw her doing. In some specific spots on the table, I could feel the surface dent slightly and make a clicking sound. After pressing 3 of them, the desk moved and revealed an opening with a long staircase. I entered the opening. I got to the other side after descending the stairs. It was an elegant, elevator-like room, empty. I saw a floor panel on one of the walls. At that moment, I was just out of myself. I wasn't questioning anything anymore. I just wanted to see where the girl had gone, report it to the cops, and get out of that place as fast as I could. I touched the only button present, and the ground started to descend. It was a very elegant and Baroque-like structure. You've come. It was about time. I have such sights to show you, said a clear and feminine voice coming from the walls. Maybe it was Pietra? The ground stopped descending. The walls opened. A massive, enormous underground structure, like an infinite underground palace, all in a 1600s-like style. There were classical and even some unknown old paintings, and the place had a strange but pleasant whiskey scent. Millions of people dressed in smoke-colored suits and dresses, all wearing golden and blue masks. They were walking, sitting, eating, dancing, drinking, or just standing in the endless rooms like it was some kind of eternal masquerade. As soon as I stepped out, I realized I should have just patrolled the building as I was told to. 2 tall figures in long black robes and golden, overstuffed face masks stared straight into my soul. In perfect synchrony and absolute silence, they pulled adorned blades out of their pockets. I ran back into the elevator, feeling something I had never felt before, and smashed the only button on the panel. The doors instantly closed, and I fell onto my back in complete shock. I knew something was seriously wrong. The doors opened as soon as I got back to the ground floor. I rushed out of the elevator and into the management room again. Stumbling, I ran to the door, but for some reason it was now locked. Whatever they are, they know I'm here. As a security guard, I had to pass some physical and tactical training. Nothing too special, but it could save your life. I tried to stay calm while I picklocked the door with improvised tools. But that calm faded away when I heard the elevator engine click again. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath until I started choking. I kicked the door near the handle, and I could hear the steel breaking. I kicked it with all my strength, using the sound of the desk moving as motivation. That's when they arrived in the room with me. The 2 golden-masked figures entered just as I managed to destroy the door handle. I stepped out of the management room only to find another one of them at the end of the hallway. "What are you? What do you want with me?" I screamed, pulling out the pocket knife I carried hidden on the right side of my waist under my pants and belt. "So brave, huh?" "Such a waste," said one of them, with a modulated voice. I said I couldn't finish my sentence. The one in the hallway sprinted at me with his golden-handled knife. I saw that he had a gun in a holster on his leg, and I don't know why he didn't just shoot me. The one who attacked me was the shortest of the 3. The management room door had its handle broken, but it was still mostly in place. I shut the door as fast and as hard as I could, causing it to jam and trap the two other figures inside, at least for a while. Right after that, the masked one in the hall reached me. I managed to grab the hand holding the knife and we both fell to the ground. I kicked him away, but he slashed my leg just below the knee. As he stumbled back and fell again, I got up and ran toward the stairs. The cut on my left leg was superficial. It wasn't even bleeding yet. I ran past all the rooms and unlocked the front door as fast as I could. I was finally outside the building. But my relief didn't last long. The roads were absolutely empty. No cars, no people. It was 2:04 in the morning. At that time, people who work early are usually already on their way. They are a militia, a new society, and only certain people are considered worthy of joining it. I don't know the criteria, I don't know how many people are involved, and I don't know what they're doing. But if just knowing they exist means I need to be extinguished, it's definitely nothing good. I ran toward the city's police station, not too far from the building I work in. On the way, I had the strange feeling that they knew exactly where I was, and I wasn't dead yet because they simply didn't want me dead, yet. I reached the police station after 2 or 3 minutes of running. I don't even know how I managed to do it. I entered through the front door, and what I saw made me realize how completely screwed I was. All the police officers were unconscious. So were the civilians waiting there. Whatever they are, the government is involved, and they have control over everything. They somehow made everyone in the city pass out, so they can do whatever they want and leave no witnesses. That I don't know why they haven't killed me yet. Maybe they're just playing with their food. Or maybe they're planning something worse. Either way, I'm hiding inside the police station and managed to arm myself. I know they know I'm here. What did Pietro want to show me? So I'm praying to God this message reaches someone. If my prayer worked and you're somehow reading this, I'm talking now from don't trust anyone. They could be part of it. Prepare yourself because they'll come for you when you least expect it. I don't know what else to do. I'll just hope some of the cops wake up before they decide to neutralize me. Good night and good luck. Story 15. Strangers in the night. You might have heard about it. The village, abandoned at the news, as vague and scarce as possible. The tight-lipped former inhabitants that you somehow just could pick out from the crowd. Theories of natural disaster, of mass psychosis, of government experiments, even aliens. The truth is much simpler and horrifying than that. You see, it happened because of my actions. It was my fault. I will not be disclosing my name or country. Let me just say that I am a woman of faith. I pray, I go to church, I believe as long as I remember. My husband left me years ago, so I took my daughter Julia and moved to a farm in the village. We lived a calm, orderly life. I would get up early, take care of the few animals and vegetables we had, and then leave for my part-time job. When I returned home, I would cook and clean and take care of other chores. My little daughter would spend most of the day in the kindergarten. It was a rainy evening when strangers appeared on my doorstep. A small family, a woman and 2 girls. They kept knocking on my door, begging to be let in. I decided to shelter them for the night. They didn't appear dangerous. I wanted to show compassion, to help the needy. I have to admit, they did look strange, as if they had been tortured. The girls had glassy eyes and they kept clenching their yellowy blackish teeth, constantly hiding behind their mother. The mother was pale and thin, as if she had been starving. She did not want to answer any of my questions, just kept repeating how tired she was and that she just needed a bit of rest. So I decided to stop prying and just let them rest downstairs, figuring we would talk in the morning. But they were already gone when I got out of bed at 5, leaving just prints of bare feet all over the place. I don't know how, but the neighbors already knew about this nightly visit. Apparently strange things were happening through the night, lights flickering, livestock acting as if the animals were possessed, people having nightmares or not being able to fall asleep at all. Our farm sits on the outskirts of the village, so I didn't notice any of it. The day went by as usual up until the evening when our resident, well, I don't want to say which, came to visit me. I am not sure, but I think she calls herself Wiccan. She kept asking questions about last night, but a strange thing happened when she was leaving. On the doorstep she turned around and looked me in the eye. You have left evil into your house. Bad things will happen. I later learned that we weren't the first who did it. My neighbors told me that they also were visited by the woman and her 2 girls that night. There were also people who refused to let strangers into their homes in the middle of the night. That occurrence slowly began to be forgotten, but it didn't stay forgotten for long. After a week I began having nightmares about that woman. But she didn't appear helpless in my dreams. I would stand near my house on the street and see her leering over my daughter's bed, holding a noose. I would try to run into my home, but her two girls were holding me back with such strength that I couldn't do anything, and it was usually then when I would wake up. It didn't take long for strange things to begin happening after the nightmares started. My cow died, which was bad. The chickens started dying as well, which made things worse, and as I tried to bury the animals, their carcasses broke open, hordes of maggots squirming out of them, and liquid of consistency and color no animal should have poured from their bodies. I'm not sure it wasn't blood. I thought nature would accept its creatures into the soil. I was wrong. Then my daughter fell sick. It started as a common cold but quickly grew into something else. I called a doctor who gave her meds and injections before he left again, but my girl didn't get better. All I felt was despair and fear. I didn't feel well in my own home, as if it hated us. I decided to find the Wiccan woman and maybe talk to her, ask for advice. But I couldn't find her anywhere, and the other village people kept saying that she disappeared long ago. Nobody believed me, that she visited me. Aside from that, I learned the newest village news. Livestock began to die in all households. 2 people went missing, and the neighbor 2 houses down the street from my house hanged himself last night. I returned. I didn't know that the scariest thing in my life would happen tonight. I did all the chores and tried to tuck my daughter in, but it was difficult. She was afraid of something but wouldn't tell me. I couldn't fall asleep for hours, and when I did, I had the nightmare again. I was awoken by my daughter's scream. I tried getting out of bed but couldn't. Someone was pinning my arms down. It was the 2 girls, standing on both sides of the bed, holding me with inhumane strength. I panicked and started trashing in my bed, trying to break free. But the more I struggled, the stronger they kept me down. I don't know when or how I began praying. And only then did their grip loosen and I stormed to my daughter's room, my heart pounding in my chest. In the room I saw the silhouette of the pale woman fade, the noose from my dreams tightly wrapped around my daughter's neck. I tore it off, scooped my girl into my arms and ran to the neighbors. They weren't exactly happy about our nightly visit, but seeing our condition they let us in and didn't ask any questions. I barely managed to stay the night. In the morning, not packing any of our things, not returning to our home at all, we took the train to my sister who lived in the nearest town. She didn't believe my story, but when she saw the bruises on my arms and the trace of the noose on my daughter's neck, even she, an atheist, crossed herself. We lived at her place for a while before moving to our own place in town. They say the village got deserted entirely half a year after this. Most people just got up and left their homes. And those who stayed didn't live long. So there you have it. Now you know.